BroBots in disguise.
4 million years ago on the planet Earth, two brothers started watching Transformers media, and now they are going to make it your problem. Hi, I'm Hayden.
And I'm Frankie.
And on this podcast, we are going through and discussing every episode of every Transformers cartoon.
Today, we are continuing with Generation 1 cartoon. Today, we are continuing with... Today, I'm trying to make this easy for you to edit.
Good.
Today, we are continuing with the Generation 1 cartoon. Episode 4, Transport to Oblivion. Episode 5, Roll For It. And Episode 6, Divide and Conquer. Released in 1984.
Do you have the specific dates for those? Like the day that they came out?
I could look them up in that little pamphlet that came with my DVDs, but
It's fine.
I didn't feel like writing all of those out.
I'm shocked at the lack of research integrity.
Y'all can go on TF Wiki if you really need that information.
Also, please go on TF Wiki.
That's great.
It's worth it.
It's great. It's a never-ending hole of Transformers information, stuff that you didn't even know it was possible to exist.
Yeah. So yeah, these three could be considered the Space Bridge trilogy, because they all directly involve the Space Bridge, and are a direct sequel to, well, kind of retconning the prior story arc, because I believe the three, the More Than Meets the Eye, part 1 and 3, those ones, those ones were kind of like a pilot episode.
Yeah, they're a pilot episode. One big
a pilot movie, sort of.
And on that DVD I mentioned, you actually have the option to play it as a movie, which is pretty cool.
Oh, that's cool.
I mean, it still has the commercial bumpers, but it cuts out the end credits and the theme song of the second two episodes. And that has a feature on a couple of other multi-parters throughout G1, I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, and that ends with, Optimus and the Autobots preparing the Autobot spaceship, the Ark, to go back to Cybertron, and Spike comments that the world governments have given them the fuel to revitalize Cybertron.
So that was a lie.
Yeah. We start off this episode, nope, we're still here.
Yeah.
And they just don't address it. They're like, did the Ark not work? Or like, why are we still here? Like, why are the Autobots still here?
Why are we still here?
And guess what? The Decepticons are still here too. Let's use that to lead into synopsis
section
for the episodes. For anybody who hasn't seen these episodes, what are you doing? Go watch it. G1 is a gem of 80s nostalgia and just honestly can be quite funny, and at other times can actually be fairly competently written.
Yeah, it's come on, man. It literally has like the 80s grid lines in the theme song itself. Like that. You can't get any better than that.
Transformers marketing is cool.
Very cool. Yeah, so recap. Did you want to start with Transport to Oblivion?
Sure. So yeah, like I said, they start with a narration showing that the Autobots have won their first big fight on Earth, and the Decepticons have survived, but gives no explanation for why they haven't left to go back to Cybertron. So, Megatron attacks a power station to steal energy, causing a blackout that alerts the Autobots to come and stop them. Meanwhile, on Cybertron, Shockwave is drained of power and desperately tries to contact Megatron, and they plan to test the Space Bridge technology.
Yeah, which
we'll get into that.
Very,
very interesting.
Very unique, yeah. I'd say.
Bumblebee and Spike happen to stumble upon them very conveniently. And are taken prisoner. Bumblebee is brainwashed and leads the Autobots into a trap. And Spike is about to be used as a pilot to send energon cubes over the space bridge on a little shuttle they've prepared.
Conveniently human-sized.
Yeah. But then the Bumblebee gets repaired after the trap is sprung, and he leads them to save Spike just in time, and as they do, Megatron gets blasted through the space bridge and ends up on Cybertron.
Team Rocket style from Pokemon. Yeah, and then immediately after that is Roll for It, and
Picking up basically where that episode is off.
So it's kind of presumed that Megatron is dead. Not again, I don't. Yeah, they didn't presume that. Well, they presumed all the Decepticons were dead, but this time it's like, oh my gosh, Megatron is dead. He's not.
In the words of Tidal Wave, Megatron lives.
Yeah.
Which actually Optimus says that in when he first shows up in Transport to Oblivion.
Oh yeah,
almost exactly the same way that
Megatron
Tidal Wave says that.
But yeah, so this one, Starscream, begins a very long tradition of taking over the Decepticons after assuming that Megatron is dead.
For about 5 seconds.
So he attempts to lead the Decepticons in an energy raid, but is foiled by the Autobots. And then Megatron returns to Earth with the help of Shockwave and enacts a plan to steal the antimatter formula from a human laboratory. They just have it. Apparently they found it. Prowl and Blue Streak kind of have like their own side thing going on here. They chase Starscream's group and are almost defeated, but are saved by a new human ally, Chip Chase, who is then captured by the Decepticons and forced to recreate the antimatter formula. The Autobots rescue him, but are utterly wrecked by Megatron's antimatter cubes. We'll get to those in a bit, but Megatron, very interesting method of powering up. Megatron leads an all-out attack on the Autobot base as an antimatter gun. He just turns into a gun and starts shooting antimatter. It's
in case we didn't mention it, G1 Megatron turns into a pistol rifle.
Yes, just a gun.
Yeah, he just turns into a gun.
All these other vehicles are cars and planes.
For various legal reasons, he has very rarely ever turned into such a thing again.
Yeah. I too would love to buy my child a gun as a toy.
I mean, Nerf. Doesn't Hasbro still produce Nerf?
It's Megatron or nothing.
Yeah. I mean, there was that one where he turned into a Nerf gun. I think that was the last time that he turned into a gun.
Transformers Generations or something like that. It was like a
before Generations.
Well, it was like classics. A reinvention of
I think it was like
the
classics.
Old character designs and stuff.
But
yeah, he was a neon green and neon orange like Nerf Maverick gun, like the revolver. Yeah. It's great.
And I think they've settled on making him a tank now.
Yeah, he's pretty much usually a tank or a jet, either one of those.
Which is basically a gun with wheels, so.
It's just the big one. Yeah, but he turns into an antimatter gun, but he's stopped by Wheeljack and Chip, causing him to go critical. Yes. And then that leads...
So there's a little bit of a gap between these two episodes, but I still would consider it part of the trilogy because...
Transport to Oblivion and Roll for It kind of directly roll into each other.
Right, and they directly follow on the pilot, More Than Meets the Eye, Part 1 through 3.
Yeah.
But Divide and Conquer would also fit into this because it has sort of this climatic battle. I mean, as if the other ones didn't have a climatic battle.
These three episodes kind of feel apocalyptic sometimes.
Well, that's what I'm saying about the whole... Well, we'll get to that in the lore section.
Yeah.
But this one relies heavily on the space bridge also, so that's why it falls into this sort of trilogy here.
Yeah. Divide
and Conquer. Optimus is injured defending a human weapons factory from Starscream and the Jets in this epic 3-on-1 battle. Laserbeak is sent to finish off Prime, and that puts him into critical condition. So Chip and a team of Autobots hijack a space bridge to get a new Cosmotron from Wheeljack's lab on Cybertron for Optimus, but Megatron sends Decepticon jets to trap them there using acid rain.
Not the character, the actual acid rain, but the actual character acid rain is in that group of jets.
Right, I believe the green one gets named Acid Rain, and then according to Animated, the yellow ones are, I believe, Sunstorm and Typhoon.
Yeah, we see
they're
Sunstorm.
They're later named that in other things.
Yeah, Sunstorm gets used sometimes in like the comics and stuff. I don't think I've ever seen any other piece of Transformers media with Typhoon in it. It may be. I don't know.
So anyway, while this is where the name of the episode comes in, Divide and Conquer, Megatron takes this opportunity to attack the remaining Autobots and nearly whips whips them out.
Wipes them out.
Wipes them out. Sorry, spell check. But Chip's team return just in time to revive Optimus, who then challenges Megatron to a duel and beats him, causing the Decepticons to retreat.
Good stuff.
So that's the end of our synopsis section. Let's move into our character and story analysis.
So, transport to Oblivion. Yeah. We mentioned this earlier that there's literally no explanation to why they don't go to Cybertron.
Yes. Yeah,
it's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
Because it's just like, it's so perfectly set up.
We are going back home. We have won. Nope. We're just chilling here. But it's kind of a neat little, like, we've won, but have we really won moment at the beginning of the episode? Because Optimus is really grim, like, who is it?
Yeah, there's a, the episode starts with, like, a statue. It's like a rock formation that vaguely looks like, Starscream, is it? Or is it Megatron?
Starscream.
Yeah, it vaguely looks like one of the Seekers. And
Cliffjumper just immediately attacks
it. He's like, look out, it's a Decepticon, like that and stuff. And it's like, does he have post-traumatic stress of some kind? I don't know.
Yeah, and he interrupts Optimus and Ironhide's romantic sunrise.
Yeah. They're just watching the sunrise together. Yeah. I love it.
But Ironhide remarks that the Decepticons are gone for good, and Optimus is like, I wish I could believe that. And sure enough, the Decepticons are still around.
Yeah. Also, I did want to bring up that this is the first time that they're called mechanical creatures, not intelligent robots.
Yeah, they kind of flip-flop between those two descriptions.
So it's like, intelligent robots it's an interesting thing that kind of gets split in between depictions. Some will go more for the mechanical creatures, that they're organisms made out of metal, like living metal and stuff like that.
Right.
And sometimes, like, the metal, if you separate it from the main body, like, sometimes it does stuff on its own, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But other times they're more on the lines of, like, intelligent robots, where they can kind of, like, jack into other technology and, easily replace stuff. Instead of, like, if one of them loses an arm.
Yeah.
If they're being depicted as mechanical creatures.
Yeah.
It's surgery to put it back on.
Right.
If they're being depicted as intelligent robots, it's walking into the shop to get it reattached.
And that was something I was going to bring up later in this episode is, like, Ratchet, the medic. Is he really a medic or is he a mechanic?
Yeah.
And that's why Sparkplug becomes his, like, medical assistant, is because he's a mechanic.
Yeah.
And I really think that's pretty neat that, it's one of those things that doesn't get explored directly, but it's just kind of an interesting thing to think about,
Right.
But they never, like, address it enough to really define it. Like in the Marvel comics, it's very obvious that they are just machines, right?
Yeah.
But in here it kind of flip-flops a little bit, and then in other shows like Prime, they're much more on the creature side, But so the Decepticons have created sort of an underwater city.
I really like
their spaceship that crashed.
I like the design where it kind of feels like the ship crashed and they just kind of took a bunch of the scattered parts and built them into little houses and stuff.
Yeah.
You don't ever really see them go to these places or anything, but the matte painting art on the ship at the bottom of the ocean is just top tier. It's really cool. I like it a lot more than the thrusters sticking out of Mount St. Helena or Helens.
Is it
Mount St.
Helens? It's basically Helens, but they call it Helena in. I don't know if they mention it in the cartoon, but they definitely call it that in the Marvel comics.
Yeah.
Which were released around this time, and then also, of course, they have the tube that goes up from the ship above the water.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know if this one like originated it or anything, but I feel like I've seen that a lot of different times across like different media and stuff.
Yeah.
Like the shooting up out of the water. Transformers probably stole it from somewhere, but
yeah. and we'll get into later episodes how the Autobots have kind of colonized throughout. They've spread out. We never really see it directly, but you get the sense that they've colonized in and around the volcano, sort of like ants building up in a hill.
Yeah.
Because you got stuff that comes out of the top of
Yeah,
the
they kind of
volcano
spread around the area that they are stuck in. And
Right.
that was something I thought was kind of interesting, is that the Autobots are just on patrol, like looking for trouble. And it kind of felt like
that helps fill in sort of like the military feel.
Yeah, they kind of had like a militia.
Because they've got Jazz and Spike on patrol in the city, and Bumblebee and Spike are on patrol in the desert.
Yeah, it's like they're running a beat or something.
Right. Which, by the way, speaking of the city, we're finally seeing a little bit of life in this world, because like I mentioned last time, the world of Earth, if you just go off of what you see instead of assuming that this is 80s Earth, right?
Yeah.
Which in season 2 you can definitely just assume that this is 80s Earth. But if you just go off what you see in the pilot episode, Earth is very desolate.
Yeah, you
There's
don't
like
see that
nothing.
many people around.
There's like, and everybody wears the same beige button-down shirt and jeans,
Blue jeans,
and the
yellow
yellow
boots.
hard hat.
And the hard hat.
But
everybody's in the construction business for some reason.
Because they're rebuilding Earth, because something happened.
Maybe.
We'll get into the lore and theories later, but we finally see some cities in this episode. I watched these with my wife, right?
Yes.
And she always has something funny to say about at least one of the episodes. In this episode, when Megatron is stealing the energy, he says, "Soon I'll have a shipment of energy large enough to send back to Cybertron," or something like that, right? But she misheard it as Megatron saying, "Soon I will have a human fart large enough for Cybertron."
What? Why?
I don't know. There's a lot of weird audio things in Transformers where you think they said one, but
there's
the show is easier to understand than the movie. For some reason, for years, I could not understand things that they said in the movie.
Yeah, but it's also a weird thing where, like, sometimes they'll just throw out some random vocabulary word as, like, gobbledygook and jargon and stuff.
Yeah.
And, you hear it and you're like, wait, did I hear that right? Did they say, like, Cosmotron or whatever? Like that.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, okay, that's just the name of the thing. Other times, they say a completely normal thing, but it gets so garbled in the audio mixing or whatever that you just can't understand it. So you're like, oh, okay, that must be some new terminology.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of an example, but we'll probably get to it in a later episode.
Yeah.
The
Ironhide gets hurt once again.
Yeah. And Cliffjumper rushes in blindly once again. There's sort of a theme here with these red characters.
This is just how they operate.
Yeah, but Cliffjumper gets beaten down by Megatron, and Optimus has a cool fight with Megatron. Megatron gets a power boost from getting slammed into the wall.
Yes, he does, which is actually pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty
like
cool,
that.
but also, once again, inconsistent. Between episodes, in a later episode, we'll see that a huge electrical strike from a wall injures people.
Yeah, it's and also, like, you think, well, okay, if they can just get a power boost from being slammed up against an electric wall, then why do they have to put it in energon cubes and stuff?
Yeah,
why can't they just stand up in front of the thing and stuff? I mean, technically, you could get an energy boost from the adrenaline of being struck by lightning. But that doesn't mean that it's a reliable power source.
I'm just imagining this guy getting struck by lightning and then
running a
mile and then just falling over dead.
Yeah.
But anyway, so this episode really kind of starts Bumblebee's stardom, which has rocketed to insane heights in recent years.
Absurd heights.
Right. Like, he's more prevalent than Optimus at this point. But back then, in the first couple episodes, Hound was sort of the kid-friendly character.
He was supposed to be.
But I guess Bumblebee's a more affordable toy, being that Hound is like, what we would call deluxe class nowadays.
He's also a military Jeep as well.
Yeah, and then
not
Bumblebee
many kids.
is like this little, You know, he'd be what we'd call scout class these
Yeah,
days.
your
The little
dad
mini
doesn't.
vehicles.
Your dad doesn't drive you to work at his vague construction job that he works in a desolate city, but he doesn't drive you to work in a military jeep. I mean, he might. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe you're a military kid, huh?
But you know, it's more
In World
often
War
that
II.
you will. It's more often that a kid in the 80s would be driven to work, or you know, driven somewhere in a Volkswagen or something like that.
Because that's the only like not super high dollar sports car that
It's also
the normal
like, you know,
Autobots turn into.
He's also like he's a simple toy. Like
the
he's
little
very
mini
simple
bots.
to transform.
So more kids are gonna buy him than
it just works
or get him for Christmas or whatever.
Yeah, I did think it was funny that, you know, they find the bridge, the space bridge.
Yeah, they just kind of stumble on it.
They stumble on it, and when they do, it's like, oh no, we've been spotted, and then they turn around to drive away, and then B just falls into the ravine.
You would think
like he's perfectly stabilized, but then he just
no, it's like he put himself into reverse.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I would get that if that happened in the first episode when they're trying to figure out their new alternate forms or something like that, you know? I feel like there's a first episode that does something like that.
Yeah.
In one of the shows. But
they do that sometimes with like non-vehicular forms, like when they transform into like an animal or something like that.
Yeah, but he's already been a Volkswagen for a while, and he's been driving forever, you know? I mean, maybe he was a hover car on G1. It's kind of hard to tell. It looks like he's got a wheel on Cybertron, but also it kind of looks like he hovers.
Yeah.
But
I always thought he hovered.
Yeah.
He flies around a good bit in the air. So it kind of looks
see, they just released a toy of that.
They did?
Yeah, it was
nice.
Pretty recent. At the time of recording this. It looks really cool.
Cool.
But anyway, I don't think he has wheels. So
yeah,
it's confirmed. It's a hovercraft. But okay. Yeah. So anyway, my point is, why would he make that mistake? I mean, you don't turn around to walk forward
because he's already
start walking backwards.
He's already facing away from the ravine.
Right. Why would he put himself in reverse? Now, if they animated like a little, maybe they were supposed to animate like a little rock falling and like he just falls.
That could be. This episode, there's a lot of sections that feel very like rushed. A lot of animation errors.
No, that's just G1 in general.
Yeah, but this one's kind of rough.
yeah, it is.
But okay, the space bridge though. We got to describe this thing space bridge. Because it is so convoluted and unique and weird.
Yeah.
So it's not like, you know, most portals and stuff that usually show up in these types of shows. It's just a door, like an energy door or something.
A wheel or
you just
something.
walk across it.
Just taking from other Transformers media, Cybertron, it's a ring of fire.
Yeah.
Or a cut in the fabric of space-time.
Yeah, in Prime, it's kind of like a wormhole. Like there's kind of like a little whirlpool that leads into it, and then when you get in there, there's like kind of a bridge that you go through. There's like some distance there,
right?
But it's more like a wormhole than anything else. This one is It's like a big stretch. I mean, it's Decepticon steel, which means it's purple. There's just this giant purple thing out in the middle of the desert.
It's a purple ring with like this little racetrack,
like a runway.
A runway that goes up to it. They launch this little shuttle down the runway, and then it stops in the ring. The ring closes.
It's not like about building up any sort of momentum or anything.
Yeah,
it's just
getting it out of the way so that nobody gets sucked into it.
But it has to go at a high speed for some reason.
Oh yeah.
And so then it just stops in the middle of the ring. Yeah. And there's nothing in there. There's no support or anything. It's just dirt on the inside. Then it shoots like beams of light. Well, it starts like lighting up and starts spinning around.
Yeah.
And then it shoots beams of light up into the sky at kind of an angle so they meet like a pyramid. And where they meet, there's like big old thunder and lightning clouds kind of escape from it. It opens up like this sort of square shape.
Yeah, triangular.
And then all of that, like, in everything inside of its cone, it sucks everything up. So there's like dirt and debris just flying up into this portal in the sky.
Yeah.
And the ship just kind of goes, ooh! like flies away with it, and then it gets tunneled through a beam of light all the way to Cybertron, and then gets shot into this tube.
Yes.
Where Shockwave, like, immediately into Shockwave's lair. Like, just has it, like, spit it out in his living room.
Right, it's like the elevator in the middle of the room.
Yeah, and then, like, the door opens, literally elevator style. Door opens, and then there's the little shuttle, and then whoever's piloting it just kind of drives it in.
Right.
And stuff. Who thought of this?
Okay, so what I like about that is it goes for the sort of hard sci-fi where they feel the need to over-explain everything.
Yeah.
And it kind of fits
because later Megatron's like explaining
it's really a scientific experiment.
Yeah.
They are really like figuring this new technology out for the first time. I mean, Megatron mentions it like, yeah, we're going to revive the space bridge program or something like that, you know?
Like it was something
like
already.
It was something they've been working on. They just hadn't had a planet to test the other side of it on.
Yeah.
Right?
But it's just so funny to me because he starts explaining it later in the episode, like the process behind it.
Yeah.
And he's like, there's a beam of light. Concentrate on that light. Otherwise, you'll fall out of the space bridge into the eternal void of nothingness and stuff. And it's like, what is going on? Where did these rules come from? This is a show that doesn't abide by its own rules, and all of a sudden it just decides, like, we're going to have an extremely convoluted rule set to follow.
Right.
With this specific thing that you would think the writers would just go for something, like, simple and easy.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's just like, you walk through the energy door, and you're on the other side. No, this thing is intensive.
Yeah. But that's what's cool about Transformers is it never really talks down to the kids watching it.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
I understood it. I just never understood why it was so complicated.
Honestly, I've learned a lot of my big vocabulary from watching Transformers.
Yeah.
Because, to make them sound like robots, they gave them big vocabulary.
Verbosity.
Especially Optimus Prime,
Yeah.
And Megatron, too.
When we first watched Prime, there's an episode where Starscream says, I'm going to take you out, Prime, just so that I don't have to endure your pontificating. Yes. And I kid you not, after I watched that episode, I, opened up the dictionary and was like, oh.
Yeah.
It means blustering, by the way.
And then also, so you can learn a lot of good vocabulary words. Or if you're watching the movie for the first time, you can learn swear words.
Yeah, like we did as kids. It was lovely. But yeah, it kind of feels like some sort of, like a military testing. You mentioned that.
Yeah.
But it just gave me the vibe of like something like Roswell or something like that.
Yeah.
Like some weird thing like that.
It's just always out in the desert.
Oh, Bumper. Speaking of animation errors.
Yeah, sometimes it throws in characters by accident. There's the second Starscream who we call Ulchtar because that was that was
the production name or something.
Yeah, they were originally going to call him Ulchtar and then they changed it to Starscream, thank God.
Or was that the toy's original name?
No, that was what they were I think Bob Budiansky was going to originally call
which would have been hilarious.
Yeah.
I would have loved to seen a universe where it was Megatron and Ulchtar.
So I always call whenever there's a second Starscream in the shot or Starscream's not where he's supposed to be, or he's where he's not supposed to be, I call him Ulchtar. Yeah. And then here we have Yellow Cliff Jumper, which, there was a Yellow Cliff Jumper toy called Bumper. So.
Yeah. I mean, they're so close to being the same.
Yeah.
One just has slightly more polygonal.
One's more square.
Yeah, one's literally more square, in personality and everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so Bumblebee makes his escape and he starts driving away and stuff. We got some thunder going on in the background. Interesting. It was a dark and stormy podcast night.
I guess so.
So Bumblebee drives away and he starts he tries to lose him and everything.
He gets captured.
Yeah, he goes into a cave.
Okay, no.
They're not following him.
First, they both get captured and they're on the little tram thing.
Yeah.
Right? And then he transforms and drives out the window instead of just punching through the window and saving Spike. Spike has to run alongside Bumblebee, and then
he doesn't even let him in.
He trips and gets captured by Soundwave. And then Bumblebee gets away and drives super far, and then just gets captured by Megatron.
Yeah, they're literally just there at the top of the hold that he climbs through.
Right.
Just found you.
Yeah.
Another instance of
this is something neat about Soundwave is that he always tells his cassettes when he launches them, like Operation Capture or something like that. You know?
Which makes you think about like just the amount of times that he does it.
Yeah,
just it unintentionally makes him kind of scary because you think how many contingencies and operations has this dude like planned out.
Just throw your notes on your phone.
You know, this is a kinetic podcast. It really makes you feel like we're throwing items at you. It's a 4D experience.
Yes, you gotta buy our Smell-O-Vision.
But yeah, like Soundwave, how many of these things has he planned out with his comrades and everything, where he's just like sitting there like, okay, so there's going to be a very specific situation. I don't even know if it's going to happen or not. But what if this little fleshy human and this bumblebee character, they both are running away from us and stuff, like, okay, here's the possible plan that could happen with this situation and scenario. It's hilarious. But yeah, I think this has got to be the highlight to the episode for me. Megatron's chest tentacle.
No! No! It's weird. I don't like it.
I don't like it. It's funny to me because literally the next episode we get to see what's inside his chest, and that tentacle is nowhere to be seen.
right. That's the inconsistency I'm talking about. You take apart Transformers all the time, and the insides are completely different just all the time. Also, the what do you call it? The magic fist thing, where like
the sliding fist.
Where
magic fist technology.
Yeah, we'll see that a lot in these episodes where a hand retracts and then comes back as some other tool, and it's like, how many of those tools you got in your wrist?
And there's like no space for it whatsoever.
Yeah. But anyway, so mechanical beings, they can just reprogram each other's brains apparently to brainwash.
For context, the scene is that Bumblebee gets captured, and then Megatron plans to alter his memories,
right,
and send him back to
with
the Autobots,
a tentacle
and
that comes out of his chest.
Tells them that reprograms Bumblebee to tell the Autobots that the space bridge is in a cave, and they're going to lay a trap for them in this cave. But he does it by his chest just slides open, and there's like an infinite void in there.
Yeah.
And then this little snake, like telescoping, like, I don't know, like probe looking thing comes out, and it just presses up against his head, and a bunch of little waves, like little energy waves, memory altering waves, like start pouring out of it, and it just alters his memories that way.
I would understand if they had...
Why his chest? Why not the magic sliding hand technology?
Well, I would understand if they had to hook him up to some sort of machine they had back at the base or something, right? How come Megatron is just able to do this?
Yeah,
right?
I mean, like, you see that occasionally. But I guess
we see that in, like, the next episode, Soundwave can just read human thoughts, and, like, Megatron can just read computers by putting his hand to it and stuff. So, like, magic hand wavy technology.
It's like it's ironic because you actually do see it later in like Energon. There's like references to Megatron like reprogramming the allegiance of various characters.
Yeah.
Like he gets into this sort of like mind control territory.
But that was like,
so it's not unfounded.
right. But that was like he had like a brand that he branded them with.
Yeah,
but
and it did something to the programming or something like that.
Now here's an interesting thing.
He says he's going to alter their memory chips.
Right. So he's implanting a memory in him. But Laserbeak is there later with his little antenna up. So, whenever Bumblebee comes back to tell the Autobots, he talks like, oh no, Spike was captured by the Decepticons! But then Laserbeak puts his antenna up and he starts talking all robotic, and he's like, they're in a cave.
Yeah. And he's got like little purple effects around his head,
you can
where it's like
hear that he is saying it differently.
So it could be that Laserbeak was transmitting a signal of some kind.
Right. He's
maybe how do Megatron brains just work?
Now in later episodes we'll see the Insecticons with the cerebral shells.
Yeah.
Which make more sense, but Megatron just has this mind-altering chest tentacle.
Yeah, and there's like also an episode where like Devastator, they like alter his memories so that he's an Autobot or something like that, or working for the Autobots.
I think they just straight up mind controlled him or something. We'll
get
to
it was
that
something
eventually.
Like that. It's very, very strange.
Right.
But, and like even, next episode they have, or not next episode.
Oh yeah. No, it's in the next episode.
Yeah.
The Autobots like control Skywarp's body, not his brain, his body.
Yeah, like his nervous system and stuff.
Right.
It's weird, but
Like, they just casually brainwash and mind control people.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So they set the ambush, and the Autobots go to this cave.
Yeah, they go to the cave.
And that's it's kind of goofy, the fight.
Yeah, it's a pretty goofy
There's
fight.
a lot of funny,
there's like...
It's magic hand technology, the fight, which I love.
Yeah, somebody shoots this weird Pac-Man net to capture Laserbeak.
It's a net with a mouth, like an opening mouth.
Yeah.
And the mouth seems to be weighted because it lands, and then the rest of the net is like held down.
Oh, and even though Megatron like sort of planned this, he also seems to come up with this on the spot.
Yeah, he was just like, I don't know, man. We'll just meet him in the cave and see what happens.
Right, because he's like, I'll alter Bumblebee's memory chips, but then Laserbeak reports back that he said something about a cave, so then Megatron's like, we'll meet him in the cave!
Yeah, because sometimes it feels like they're this disciplined military unit and stuff up against, like, terrorists or something like that.
Yeah.
Other times it just feels like a bunch of hooligans in the desert.
Yeah.
Like Wild West sort of shenanigans.
Yeah. I mean, Jazz hits a laser blast with a baseball bat made out of a stalactite.
He just grabs a stalactite, and instead of
I think
a stalagmite,
tight.
I don't know. I don't know which
ones
ones.
from the roof are holding on tight. The ones from the bottom are stretching with all their might.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, or at least that's how I always remember it.
Okay.
I don't know.
I feel like
wrong.
my understanding of cave geology is all askew.
Yeah.
But yeah, he literally just pulls one of these off of the ground and whacks it like a baseball, completely ignoring the fact that these things have like exploded facilities.
Yeah.
I love it.
So
Megatron has like a magic hand buzzsaw that randomly pops out and stuff. He has like two different things in that fight. It's a buzzsaw, and then there's like another thing. No, he has just a gun.
Oh, look, just a gun.
Yeah.
He has a gun on his arm, but he brings a gun out of his wrist also.
He elects to use the magic handgun, and I'm just like, okay, I love this.
Yeah. But something interesting you pointed out was that at the beginning of the episode, Ironhide jumps in the way of Megatron's blast to save Optimus. And here in this fight, Optimus returns the favor and saves Ironhide.
There's some really good character stuff with that. Like the Ironhide's Optimus bromance is really nice. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
The old war vets, because like it's interesting. You don't really get a sense of like Optimus's age, like what kind of it's always presented to you that Ironhide's the old man of the group,
right?
And he later gets replaced by a literal old man.
Yeah, Cub.
Yeah. The grumpiest Autobot on the planet, who has actual age lines on his face.
Right, and a story for everything.
But yeah, Ironhide's, he's kind of the old man and stuff, the old geezer. Bumblebee's the young kid.
Yeah.
Or the rookie, at least.
Yeah.
At least 20s or something like that. You never get a sense of how old Prime is supposed to be. Because sometimes he seems like he's this wise, sagacious leader and stuff, and other times he's just he just kind of feels like a standard warrior, and then other times he's also like super jolly.
Yeah,
like
he's
like
also
a father
like telling
figure, Santa
dad
Claus.
jokes and stuff.
Yeah,
I'd say he's like a 35 to 45-year-old dad.
Yeah.
He can be very serious at times, but he can also be quite silly.
We all need a father figure like Optimus in our lives.
Which is why people were so sad when he died. Spoiler alert.
Yeah. Everybody knows.
I know. That's literally his MO, is he has to die at least once.
Oh yeah, there's a great line set in here. The Starscream, retreat? Never! It just speaks for itself. I'm sorry.
And here's the thing. Actually, in season 1, he's not that much of a coward. He's actually pretty ambitious. And he
kind of sticks his neck out too far at a lot of times.
Right. He's overly ambitious and and that comes back to bite him a lot.
Yeah.
But he's not that much of a coward in season 1. Now, in later seasons and series, he does really become a coward, and in other series, he becomes a real hero.
Yeah.
But
there are many aspects to these characters that, like, a lot of the characters in G1, sure, are pretty, like, generic and stuff. Like, they're kind of one note and stuff. But so many of them have multiple different facets. And a lot of it kind of has to do with the fact that it's like, well, you know, today the writer needed this character to be this sort of archetype. But
it kind of fleshes them out more than you would expect.
So you get, like, later series will pick and choose different aspects of these characters to focus on. And stuff. Like, Wheeljack, if you think about, like, you know, he's a mad scientist.
Right.
But he's also a pretty competent fighter.
Right.
In Prime, they hyperfixate on the fighter aspect. He still, like, invents stuff on the fly.
Yeah.
Sort of. Like, he's sort of like a fly by the seat of his pants fighter. So that kind of brings a little bit of the inventor side.
Yeah.
And then you have other shows that lean more into the inventor side. And then you have other shows that just take the name and apply it to a completely different character.
Looking at you, Armada.
Yeah. Good character. Just not Wheeljack.
Great character, yeah.
So, yeah.
He actually looks like Sideswipe.
He looks more like Sideswipe than anybody else. So it kind of, you get that interesting
But there's a character named Sideswipe.
Right. you get an interesting, like, there's a lot of
who looks like crap.
Exactly. Yeah, there's, like, branching paths off of these multifaceted characters and stuff. But anyway, continuing on.
Yeah. So...
Yeah, Gears actually predicts B's, you know, there's something up with your head.
Yeah.
Gears
when they walk into the cave and they're like, I don't understand. Bumblebee says in his normal voice, I don't understand it. So he's obviously not under the control, but then he gets blasted and his Ratchet notices his memory chips are fried. He starts to say, you know, they ask him again.
And then he's like, oh, I remember.
He says, the cave. And he's like, oh, I remember. It was in the desert, you know. But yeah, when they first enter the thing, Gears says something about, like, maybe you need your memory chips checked.
Yeah. Pessimistic Gears, and he's just such a great character, honestly. Like, he gets fleshed out later in the show.
Yeah, earlier in the episode, he's also like, you're late again.
Yeah. He's fantastic. This is, I mean, like, it kind of shows up a couple times in More Than Meets the Eye, but Prime is an absolutely insane shot with how he takes off, the lid. For context, they all get out of the cave and they make their way over to the space bridge.
Right.
To rescue Spike, who's been captured, and they're going to set him on the little shuttle and send him through, because their whole reason for setting up the space bridge is to send Energon to Cybertron, which is going through, like, you know, it's a dead planet. They just need to send energy to Shockwave, their guy in the chair, so that they can kind of keep hold of Cybertron for longer. But yeah, so they set up Spike to be in this vessel because apparently it needs, like, a pilot, otherwise it's gonna
fall off the beam and go into Oblivion.
Yeah. But the Autobots make it, and then there's, like, a big shootout and stuff. Spike's about to go down the thing, and, you know, you got to get him out in time.
He's strapped in with seatbelts.
Yeah. So Prime just shoots the cab
He
off.
adjusts the setting on his gun, which I thought was cool. And then he snipes the cabin off of this little
human-sized vessel
thing. And then he snipes the seat belts off of Spike so he could jump out and onto Bumblebee to be saved.
Yeah, it's not really brought up a ton in previous episodes, but I think this is the first time that we really see an underlying aspect of his character where it's like, he is a ridiculously good shot
sniper.
Yeah,
which is actually a plot point in a later episode.
Yeah,
where they're trying to figure out who the real Prime is.
It's so integral to him that the other Autobots use it to determine who's the real Prime in a doppelganger scenario.
Yeah.
It's absurd.
Yeah. But something really cool here that I think
is that we
interesting.
see another Ulstar.
Yeah, I mean, I
think there's like three in this scene or something.
This is the second time Ulstar shows up, I think. But no, when the little train jet thing crashes, and spills the energon cubes. The space bridge, what we didn't mention is the space bridge is specifically timed. It can only work at certain times.
Yeah.
Which is a really interesting thing.
It kind of follows like a hard science thing.
Yeah. Like I was saying earlier, it follows a hard science thing. Shockwave is telling Megatron through their tests, like,
the space bridge is about to open.
Yeah, the space bridge is about to be open. It's only going to be open for this amount of time, and then it's going to be closed, and it can't be opened again for a certain other amount of time. And, one, that might be... Also, it's funny, they're trying to transport energy through the space bridge, which I imagine takes a lot of energy to operate.
Right.
But it must not take that much, otherwise they wouldn't use it to transport energy. But the... So it's on a timer, and my theory is that it's because of the Earth's position relative to Cybertron's position.
Yeah.
Galactic spanning, it has to be some sort of line of sight thing. It's shown as shooting this laser beam across the galaxy.
Right. So it actually has to line up. So it actually has to line up
depending on, and that's why in the next 2 episodes it moves. They have to move it to different places.
Yeah.
But apparently twice this day or something, it was in alignment that they could actually, because of their celestial movements of the 2 planets across the galaxy, it was aligned at these 2 times, and that's why the Decepticons have to retreat from the cave slaughter. Because
they're like, we got to get to the space bridge in time. Yeah, we got to get to the
space bridge to operate it. Megatron, desperate to get these cubes across, picks them up and is about to transport them himself. He's actually
desperate to save Cybertron.
He actually does seem to really care about saving Cybertron. And we see this in other series where he will make the argument that it's like, we've got, and I think he makes this argument to a few characters throughout G1 also, like, we've got to do our part to save Cybertron. The Autobots are holding us back. Yeah. You should join our side.
The Autobots are, in this show too, the Autobots are the first to run. Like, they're the first to leave Cybertron.
Right. And if you think about it, Megatron is going to get energy to Cybertron, and they're just always getting in his way. So really the Autobots are the ones prolonging Cybertron's dearth.
They're kind of prolonging the conflicts, from Megatron's point of view.
Right. But his whole thing is that he's an evil tyrant. Yeah, so once he revives Cybertron, and I think that comes up in a later episode.
His motto is literally peace through tyranny.
Right.
So
I don't think that was invented until
it was later invention. But yeah, you see this kind of dynamic where it springs up a lot in recent media that Megatron's very much like a nationalist. In a very, sci-fi sense of the word.
Right.
He's very much Cybertron first and Cybertronians first.
Right.
Which is admirable. But this is a story that takes place over several planets, like Earth and stuff. Right. So, Optimus is, a good leader because he considers variables outside of just the Cybertronian viewpoint.
Yeah, really it boils down to Optimus. They always talk about the Decepticon way, the Autobot way. That's not the Autobot way. They put others first. They show mercy. They show compassion and empathy with other creatures.
That's the main thing, is that
whereas the Decepticons,
purist. That's the term I was looking for. Megatron is a Cybertronian purist,
right?
And Optimus is a Cybertronian, not evolutionist, but he's more dynamic. He realizes that things are more than meets the eye. So,
hey! Yep, and that's why he teams up with the humans and stuff. At least in this series.
Yeah. Also,
although I do kind of like the barbaric Optimus of other shows like Armada.
Yeah, they really get into the fighter aspect.
Yeah, and then the stoic Optimus of Prime and stuff like that. And the youngin' Optimus of Animated.
There's some
the psychopath Optimus of the Bayverse.
Again, many different facets to these characters that gets branched out in different shows. But
honestly, he's kind of angsty in the Marvel comics, if I remember.
Yeah, he's kind of
he's
got a bit of a temper. Yeah. But so Megatron desperate to get the Energon cubes. I mean, just I don't know what it is. There's just a shot of him just like plastered on the ground when he gets knocked into the space bridge.
Yeah, so they shoot the cubes he's holding, which blows him up into the thing, and he's just laying there getting spun around by the space bridge.
Oh, one thing we forgot to mention about this whole space bridge process. Once all of this matter gets beamed up into this little square in the sky and stuff, it folds in on itself, and then it just explodes. For no reason. There's no reason given why it explodes.
Okay,
I imagine
let's
it's
go
like
over
all of the matter that goes up into a single point and it gets transported. There's so much energy runoff that
it's a vacuum.
Yeah.
It's a vacuum. It implodes.
But none of this is explained.
Right. Okay.
This is all stuff that you kind of have to figure out about the space bridge. Where it's why?
Let's take a moment to go over the whole space bridge thing in one go.
The space bridge thesis.
All right, here's the space bridge thesis. You have to wait for a planet, or no, you have to figure out where on Earth, literally where on Earth, you're going to put this thing so that it lines up with Cybertron at exactly the right moment so you can use it once.
Not
maybe
out of the realm of possibility.
About twice a day. You can use it about twice a day.
Yeah. Depends on the planet that you're sending it
in
to.
season 1, you can use it about twice a day.
Yeah.
If the planets are aligned, right? So then you have to build this thing or transport it or whatever you do.
It seems to move around quite a bit.
Yeah. So I imagine it folds up and you transport it.
Yeah.
Foldable
space bridge.
Then you put your contents on this go-kart thing and put a pilot in it.
And it looks like a little jet, by the way.
Yeah, it looks like a little jet. So which I think it kind of looks like an Action Master toy later on.
Yeah, it kind of does.
But anyway, it jets down this runway super fast and then just stops inside this ring.
It's not on rails either. It floats.
No, there's like a rail in the middle.
Oh, there is? Okay.
It does float, but there is a rail in the middle.
Oh, okay. Good. I'm happy to know that there's consistency.
The doors close, the ring lights up and spins around, stuff gets turned around, laser beams shoot up into the sky, open a little square, a hurricane sucks all the dirt and your little spaceship up into this little square.
Sometimes the little spaceship doesn't make it.
Yeah, laser beams it across the galaxy into Shockwave's elevator living room thing. And if you mess up, you're going to fall off the beam of energy into Oblivion, which is probably going to happen anyway because it freaking explodes when the door closes.
And it's like, it waits a second too. It's not like immediate, like it gets shot up and then boom, like that.
Yeah.
It's like
lightning, like thunderclouds, explosions. They are wrecking science.
It's so weird. But yeah, through all of that, Megatron gets sent up into the space
I love
bridge.
how they show the whole process every time in season 1.
Every single time.
And it's not until season 2 that they cut it down a little bit.
Yeah, sometimes, and then like apparently space bridge technology develops a little bit later to where it's just the ring, but at the same time, it's so weird. But Megatron gets sent up, and the Autobots, understandably, because they just saw Megatron get beamed up into an exploding portal, assume that Megatron is dead. So everyone's like, woo! Bumblebee literally says it's the happiest day of his life.
Yeah.
It's kind of dark. But yeah, we get a cool little callback to the first line in the episode where, it's like, Megatron's gone. And he's like, I really wish I could believe that.
Yeah.
And then the episode ends with, I really wish I could believe that.
Yeah. That
he's dead. And then, we get the lovely little stinger where he, gets on Cybertron, chills with Shockwave for a bit, and says, I'll have my revenge. Is there anything else you want to add before we move on to episode 5? Roll for it.
Okay. Who is Shockwave shooting at the beginning of this episode?
Yeah. He's literally just shooting off into the middle of nowhere.
Right. Maybe he's welding something on the space bridge. Maybe he's working on it. But one interesting theory would be that the female Autobots... now, this kind of clashes with when he says that he thought they were extinct. But
which, yes, Shockwave says female Autobots, I thought they were extinct at some point in the show.
That's always It's just been such a hilarious line to me ever since I heard
so funny.
Which we'll get into the discussion of female Transformers some other day, but we ain't opening that can of worms till we get to one of them.
It's not misogynist. The reason why it's just so outlandishly bizarre,
like everything in G1.
Yeah,
and just Transformers as a whole. The more Transformers tries to explain something, the more weird it gets.
Yeah,
which is kind of hilarious.
It's really funny.
But anyway, yeah. So maybe he's firing at some Autobot resistance people. Maybe he's just welding a thing.
Who knows?
Honestly,
but he says he's losing power.
Yeah, he is losing
so
power.
It's very strenuous, apparently.
Yeah, I mean they're all about to die. Now he also tries one last desperate attempt to contact Megatron. Has he been trying for a while, and this time it just happens to work because Megatron just happens to be standing there at that time?
He just keeps leaving him on red. He's like, please,
or
I'm dying.
Or is it because he's trying to contact the first ship that they went to Earth on, which is like in the ocean somewhere and doesn't show up until Beast Wars? And they're actually on the ship that they built in the pilot episode.
Right. Because like the ship that they're in through the rest of the show is the one
to the Earth on.
Yeah, it's the one that they built in More Than Meets the Eye.
Right. And
they never really address where the ship...
No, they did. In the one where he gets the green crystal that powers him up, that's his ship from the
from
beginning,
Cybertron. That's
from
right.
Cybertron.
Yeah, it crashes also, in like the...
They explain how it got there in Beast Wars.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that another day.
It's like in the jungle.
Like in 10,000 years.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
65 million years.
300 years, because Beast Wars is 300 years.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Anyway.
I think we covered a good bit.
Yeah.
The stuff that... Oh, yeah, the mechanics and doctors. Well, we went over that too.
Yeah. Also, Ratchet just kind of is fixing Ironhide, not in his medical lab, which we saw in the pilot episode, but in... just out in the open.
He's a field doctor, I guess.
but they're already at the base. He's just like, I'm just going to fix you up next to this pile of rocks where everybody's chilling.
He's a field doctor. He doesn't have a license to operate indoors.
He also just turns off Ironhide's mouth.
Yeah, he does.
I love how instead of like having to sedate Transformers, they just pull plugs and like deactivate fuses.
That'd basically be like if you were at the dentist.
Yeah.
And instead of putting a numbing agent, they just severed your nerve and then reattached it like at the end of the operation. Honestly, if it was feasible, then maybe.
All right.
Anyway, moving on.
Moving on to episode 5. Roll for it.
Honestly, one of my favorites.
Yeah, actually, this episode...
I rewatched this one so many times.
This has some of my favorite sequences from season 1 in it, actually.
Yeah. It's pretty action-packed. Like, there's a lot that happens in
this. Also, introduced in this episode, Chip!
Chip!
It was one of the coolest human characters that I don't think we saw a similar character until Raph in Transformers Prime.
Yeah, it's weird because...
And honestly, I can't remember when we saw another paraplegic character in Transformers until... ever.
Yeah.
This is like the only guy with a wheelchair in Transformers that I can remember.
Yeah.
Okay, there's that mini-con in, I think it's the 2015 Robots in Disguise who has wheels, and Rat Trap in Beast Machines has wheels for feet. So technically we have wheelchair Transformers.
Yeah. But it's not even really like a wheelchair. It's more of like, I don't know, like a robot centaur or something.
Yeah.
Because they just
half car, half robot. He's a robot, not in disguise.
Oh, man. But yeah.
But I don't know. Chip is a really cool character, and we'll get to this at the end of the episode where they're like, they never address... I'll just go ahead and say it now. They never address that he's in a wheelchair. They're just like, yeah, this is normal.
This is
Chip.
Chip.
And he's one of the great heroes of our time.
Yeah.
You know, like
He is.
That-
He's inspiration.
that is some inspirational empowerment right there.
Yeah.
That is how you.
That's
Is
how you do
empower a
representation
character.
with
right?
that.
You know,
I mean, it's
like,
important
you don't
to like.
need to get in the thing like, you know, it doesn't need to be all the time. Look, he's in a wheelchair. Like it's just part of life. Man.
It's quite nice
got
that
a wheelchair.
they don't bring that much attention
He's
to it.
representational and like in a good way. You know.
He's nice. He's also a nice guy.
Yeah, he's also a nice guy. You know, honestly. Actually, he kind of feels like he came from a Scooby-Doo episode.
Yeah,
like
he's
he could
also
be part of the mystery. Like he'd be the smartest one out of the mystery gang.
Yeah, he's
but he could be like Velma's cousin or something.
but like he's not nerd. Like he's not
Yeah.
a nerd. He's just a guy who's really good at computers.
Right. I
mean,
guess
like,
that's
he's-
because nerds are going to be into Transformers, so they didn't want to offend nerds by doing nerd stereotypes.
Well, that's the thing, is that it was just kind of marketed towards like kids
Yeah.
in general.
Yeah.
Chip isn't. He's not like, you know, oh, I'm a nerd, like, you know, and nobody understands me sort of thing. It's
Right.
he's I don't know what he's supposed to be in college, right?
Yeah, I think so. He's got like college
Yeah.
flags in his room and stuff.
Yeah, like maybe they met at like community college and he's in graduate school while Spike went off to go work with his dad or something.
Right.
Like that.
Right.
Yeah, because it's never even
Yeah,
established
it's-
like
yeah,
how
he
they
just
know
shows
each
up.
other. They're
I mean,
just friends.
You're gonna see that a lot in Transformers, where like characters just show up with no explanation.
Sometimes it's refreshing.
Yeah.
Other times it's very jarring.
Okay, in this episode, we get to see more of human civilization. There's a city they drive through again, like in the last episode, and there's this human laboratory. So, the Earth is being fleshed out a little bit more.
Yeah,
It's not as desolate as we thought. We actually see a little
Right.
greenery in this episode.
There's
It's not all desert.
Yeah. The city has, you know, like urban planning and stuff. There's a
Yeah.
parking garage as well.
Yeah.
There's a suburbia sort of area
Yeah.
where Chip lives. Yeah, it's assumed he has his own
he's
house.
in a suburbia.
like-
yeah. Well, I don't know why, but I always
maybe
thought that
he's,
like he lived with his mom and his
I
mom was
thought
out.
so.
I don't know why, but there's no evidence of that actually.
We don't know. He's got like a bunch of collegiate flags
Yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff in his room. It's assumed that he has like some sort of scholarship with this antimatter lab.
Yeah, because he's already working with the antimatter lab and Dr. Alcazar.
They legit roll up and they're like, "Hi, Chip, welcome back."
Oh yeah, that super country guy. He's just like, "Hi, Chip, welcome back."
Oh, well, shoot, I've never met an Autobot before.
Which should we just?
What's the state of robots in disguise? Is this assuming that they're like teamed up with the government? From
Well, yeah.
More Than Meets the Eye?
First, yeah, they said that the governments of the world teamed up. With
Yeah,
them, gave them
so
energy and stuff.
I guess it's like sort of a thing where it's like that security guard probably like read the newspaper or something and saw huh, interesting.
And we'll see that a lot
robot
in-
aliens here
in
on Earth.
season 2, where the Autobots are basically famous.
Yeah.
They're like celebrities.
Weird celebrities, which animated kind of gets into that a little bit.
Oh yeah, they go full superhero route with
Yeah.
them in animated.
It's pretty fun.
Yeah. I
But
see them kind of like rescue heroes. In the,
Yeah.
in G1.
they got big enough boots.
Remember Rescue Heroes? We should do a commentary on the movie.
Oh
one day.
yeah, that movie was very apocalyptic, just like this the Transformers movie.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, from the
it-
beginning of the episode, like it starts off with Megatron, doesn't it?
Yes. So it starts off with Starscream
Yeah, Starscream
trying to
and
lead the Decepticons in Megatron's absence.
Right.
Because he's just like, "Yep, well, I guess we're never getting Megatron back."
Yeah. We kind of
So he
skipped over
attacks-
like the beginning fight.
He
and stuff.
attacks a dam,
Yeah.
a hydroelectric dam, which may or may not be the same one from More Than Meets the Eye. But considering that they kind
I
of
like to
wrecked
think-
that dam,
I like to think it's the same one. Like they just finished.
they just go,
fixing it.
yeah, they just finished fixing it, and then it's the same one in the Dinobots episode.
Just keep attacking the same
Attacking the
Sherman
same-
Dam. These poor workers.
I mean, assuming they're in the same vicinity, that would explain why the Autobots are able to show up. Is because it's the same area.
Well, if you
right?
think about it, the Decepticons come in and they're like, you know, they show up and all the workers flee.
Yeah.
The cops are immediately there.
yeah,
Which also, the local precinct cops are at the dam.
maybe they're just security guards.
That could be, but I don't know. But they are immediately there.
Yeah,
and they set up.
They just start shooting at them.
God love them. They immediately just start unloading on these guys. Actually, no, they give them a chance to surrender. They're like, give yourselves up. We have you surrounded.
Put your hands up, Decepticons. Yeah. And Starscream's like, my circuits are trembling.
Yeah, it's hilarious. I just the raw tenacity of these cops is to be applauded.
So then Cliffjumper comes in and is like, we're the Decepticon Wreckers.
Curious, because there's a group of Autobots later on called the Wreckers, who are kind of like super commandos and stuff. So maybe a possible origin for that?
And once again, Cliffjumper bum rushes Starscream.
Oh, this is where we get Brawn starting to kind of come to the front. Because, he's in the background of several episodes. Let's talk about Brawn. He's a short dude. He's got this absolute...
He's so buff.
He literally looks like the Juggernaut with his dome head. He's half the size... He's like the exact same size as Cliffjumper and Bumblebee. Yeah. So he's small.
Yeah.
He is the strongest Autobot next to Huffer.
Yeah.
Huffer.
Yeah.
These two are these little tiny robots. And they are the strongest Autobots in the entire group.
Yeah.
Brawn's like this deadlifting bodybuilder.
Yeah.
And then Huffer's like the blue collar, just so happens to be super strong.
Yeah.
Type of thing. And we get this wonderful moment where Cliffjumper once again bum rushes the Decepticons, gets punted by Thundercracker with like an entire generator.
Yeah.
He lands up against Brawn,
who does not flinch.
His this isn't just like, he doesn't flinch because he's planted well and stuff, and they conveyed that through the animation. He does not move at all. His animation cell is absolutely not at all changed whatsoever. And Cliffjumper just splats up against him and falls to the ground, and he's fine.
Yeah.
I absolutely adore Brawn.
My wife does too.
Oh, does she?
He showed up, she's like, he's so chunky.
He's the greatest. I love him. He gets even more screen time.
His name, she loved his name.
Yeah, he gets even more screen time later, and it's just, it's so, it's criminal how little he gets represented in later media.
Right.
But,
he came back in the Bumblebee movie, even chunkier.
Right. Like, I'll take it.
On his head.
I'll take it.
But
it's essential to his character.
Have you seen his animated in like the Allspark Almanac?
Oh, please tell me he's even more chunky.
Oh yeah,
love it. Love it.
But anyway,
yeah, and then we they chase the Decepticons off.
Yeah. Optimus
there's a lot of animation errors in this scene.
Oh, that's rough. Man.
There's like a fence that moves into like 3 different positions when Soundwave is running away.
Yeah.
He
does not track very well. Then he gets slammed into by 2 Autobot cars.
Sent up into the sky, and Starscream
and his
picks him up.
Scream is hilarious.
It's like
that waveform.
For context, we are looking at the waveform of this audio, and it's just it's
ghastly.
It's completely filled up. So then we cut to one thing about that animation.
Thundercracker's like, some leader you turned out to be, Starscream.
Yeah. it's I just want to talk about that animation for a second, because when Soundwave gets knocked into the sky, it looks like animatic. Like there's motion lines and like scratch lines and stuff like that. It looks unfinished, like legitimately unfinished.
Well, his legs also look like a cartoon character who spazzes out for a second,
kind of Looney Tunes in that second.
Right.
But then we cut to Cybertron and Megatron's.
I also like how he turns into a little cassette player, and Starscream just kind of picks him up, so he like flies inside the jet sometimes.
Again,
other episodes he just flies with them outside in robot mode.
Yeah, It's another situation of the mass of a transformer not being factored into their shrinking and stuff. It's crazy.
Meanwhile, there's lots of lights on Cybertron for a planet that's supposed to be dead.
You know, I can't really quantify that.
Like maybe
that's
Megatron...
that's on Shockwave. He's the one who left the lights on. He was the last one there.
Cybertron will remain as you leave it. We're also going to have a big old rave in the center of the planet.
It will remain as you leave it, which is apparently generating all of the power, which is why we're broke. But yeah, I just think it's so funny how the previous episode, you have Megatron like, I will be avenged. I'm assuming like, oh man, it's going to take him a long time to get back. No, he just calls him.
Yeah.
He just calls him and that's it. He's done.
He's also like, I gotta know what how much Starscream's wrecked.
How badly Starscream's
messed
taking care
up.
of the Decepticons.
Yeah. And then Shockwave sounds like he's glad to get rid of Megatron. He's just like, have a safe trip, Megatron.
He's just like,
he sounds
oh
like he's about to launch him off into space or something.
Yeah.
Which is more of what comics Shockwave would have done.
Yeah, comics Shockwave would absolutely have done that. But
which, speaking of the comics, their space bridge... Well, we'll get to that. I'm not going to spoil that.
The Space San Francisco Bridge.
Yeah, we'll get to that when we do the comics.
Oh, yeah.
But,
yeah, so then we get to Chip. Woo!
Yes. We already talked about Chip.
Yeah, we talked about Chip.
They go to the base, and Reflector's spying on them. Actually, Megatron mentions the antimatter plan like he's already had this plan in the works since before this episode.
Yeah.
Which is kind of neat to know that Megatron's been planning multiple campaigns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, he's got plans on plans on plans.
Right.
Even though sometimes, like in the cave, it seems like he just kind of makes it up on the spot.
Right. Well, maybe he does both. He's good at improvising.
Yeah. Well, they go to Professor Alcazar's lab, which is a glorious name, by the way.
Yeah. The scientists' names in this show are amazing. And so... not generic. What's the other word? Cliche.
Yeah. And there's we'll get into those later.
To them. Hey,
we'll get to them. You know who I'm talking about. Yeah. He gives him the entire antimatter formula
on a floppy disk.
On floppy disk, baby.
Yep.
It doesn't get better than that.
Oh yes.
Let's see.
So yeah. Reflector spies on them. Chip, floppy disk, Alcazar, what a name. So
down.
Megatron meets up with Reflector and Laserbeak and storms the base after Chip has left. Chip, Spike, and Bumblebee.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, he seems to respect civilians in this scene because he captures Dr. Alcazar and
he's like, too late, I've erased it.
Yeah, Dr. Alcazar erases the antimatter formula. Is in a funny exchange of words where he's like, the Decepticons want the antimatter formula? And then Megatron breaks down the wall and says, human, the antimatter formula! I want it!
It's just like, okay, I was a little concerned about that, but he confirmed it for me.
Yep. So he deletes the formula, and then Megatron's like, well, this guy's useless, let him go.
Yeah.
And it's like...
And he leaves, like, all of the other humans.
Pretty nice of you to do.
Yeah.
And then...
he's objective-oriented.
Right.
Unlike Starscream, who gets distracted a lot.
Right. So, Blue Streak and Prowl chase down Starscream and the Jets, who are tearing apart aircraft for spare parts because they were injured in the fight at the beginning of the episode.
This gets into some really interesting Transformers biology.
Right. Yeah, so jet munching as repair.
I can't remember which one of them says it, but one of them says that, they're munching jets.
For lunch, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's really cool that they
But
can just take parts
Yeah.
from other machines and repair themselves. But that gets into the whole, like, are they just robots or are they creatures or what's going on here?
Yeah, I think it's like I think it's in the Ultimate Comics in Marvel. It might be. But one of the interpretations of War Machine is that he has like an Iron Man suit, but it can assimilate any sort of technology that he comes into contact with. So he can just like touch a tank and then absorb its cannon into his adaptive suit, and then it'll like, he has like a cannon now. And
it's
stuff.
way cooler than the movies.
Yeah. It's pretty neat. I'll have to find out which interpretation that is. But
Hey, how does he do that?
But that's
machine, son.
Yeah, that's kind of how I view this sort of jet munching thing, where they're not actually like eating the jets and stuff. They're just taking off the parts,
right?
and
like
reattaching them onto
he takes
themselves,
a wing off
and
of
it just
one jet
works
and replaces the wing on. I think it's Thundercracker.
Yeah, so I see it as kind of that thing where it's like their technology can kind of adapt something to their physiology,
Right.
and then it can just like function.
That's pretty cool.
But yeah, they get into a fight in this hangar, and Prowl says he gets shot, and then he says his battle computers are down.
Right.
And he can't.
He
I don't know. It
fight.
seems like he's paralyzed or something.
Yeah.
Like he's physically incapable of processing how to fight.
Right.
And
so he reaches out via the internet.
The internet.
Ooh.
Or not, it's not
to
even
search-
really described as the internet. It's just
Right. He's just hooking up to another online computer.
Yeah. Which I guess, yes.
Which happens to be Chip Chase's computer.
Yeah. Nobody else in the entire world is online except for Chip Chase.
He got the good computer stuff.
He's got that gaming computer.
Good thing he's got the RAM to process Prowl's battle computer. So Chip Chase uses his keyboard like a maestro to activate this stuff. And he basically video game controls Prowl to fight off the Decepticons, which is another interesting thing, kind of like how they were so easily able to control Bumblebee's brain in the last episode, that he's just able to take over Prowl's battle instincts.
Yeah.
In this situation, this is why you can't draw a direct parallel between humans and Transformers. You can't just one to one. Like, here's the humans, here's the
their transmission is their small intestine or something like that.
Right. Because there is nothing like this. Like no,
no human has a battle computer.
Right. Like now there are probably ways you could control it. Like this would essentially be the Transformers equivalent of blindfolding somebody and then somebody else telling them over a headset what to do in a fight.
It's just very convoluted.
Right. It's just like more direct.
And it's
so I
just
guess
really,
you can draw some weird parallels.
It's very interesting that he can
Transformers.
Yeah, he can also control Prowl's entire like nervous system through a keyboard.
Yeah.
But
he can do all of those fancy maneuvers.
Yeah.
But anyway.
It's funny because I think this would have been like a really great like introduction for a human character to meet the Transformers.
Right.
Is that this feels like the perfect setup for, somebody just going about their business, and then all of a sudden an Autobot contacts them and is like, listen, I need you to help me. And they're like, oh, okay, this is weird and stuff. And then eventually it's like, hey, you did good back there. And it's like, oh my gosh, you were real.
Oh, yeah. They kind of did. I feel like that was in, again, one of the comics.
Or it's like, oh, you're involved now sort of thing.
Right. And maybe that was the setup, but they also tied it together with the antimatter plot.
Yeah, but he's just kind of
like,
just knows who the Autobots are. Like,
right.
He just rides around with Bumblebee.
Yeah. So, that is a really great idea for... and they've done similar things in other series, but in other Transformers series. But yeah, like Dr. Alcazar, I lied. He did not just delete.
Like Dr. Alcazar, the lying fool.
Well, that's he says, you're too late. I erased it. And Megatron says, he lied. He uploaded the formula to somebody else's computer, and that somebody else is Chip. And that's why in the next scene, Starscream, once he retreats with Soundwave and all of them, they capture Chip from there.
Yeah.
So he downloads it onto a floppy disk, and then he memorizes the entire formula and rips the floppy disk apart with his bare hands. And this dude's strong, man.
Mind you, he is narrating all of this.
Yeah.
He says aloud, I memorized the formula, so if I rip up the floppy disk, then the Decepticons won't get their hands on it. And one of my favorite single animations in the entirety of the show, Ravage busts into the room.
Yeah,
and he says, "You're too late, Ravage. I've ripped up the floppy disk, so now you'll never get it." Hard cut to Ravage just jumping out the window with Chip in tow. And there's no action. How
it's just all of a sudden, shoom, they're shooting out that
through the window and straight into Starscream.
The comedic timing and edits, the editing in this episode, honestly, like, say what you will about the animation errors, but the editing in this episode is top notch.
Oh yeah,
I love the timing on so many gags in this episode.
Yeah. We also get to hear in this scene, Soundwave doesn't have
without
his
the vocoder.
So it was Frank Welker who did the voice for him, right?
And he's basically doing his voice for Dr. Claw, but they put so much synthesizer on him that he sounds like Soundwave.
Yeah.
But they forgot to put him on this one line, so he's just like, you want me to
do it? He's waiting.
Excellent, Ravage. Which is honestly what he sounds like in Revenge of the Fallen when Frank Welker reprises his role as Soundwave.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how much the vocoders kind of play into the character voices and stuff, because there's a lot of times where, for instance, Prime, Peter Cullen returns to voice Optimus Prime. And none of the Transformers have vocoders in that show. But it's just kind of interesting to hear them in Prime. They sound completely, and obviously there's, 30 years of age in between that.
Yeah.
But Prime sounds nothing like he does in Generation 1 because he has that vocoder on. And it just kind of like adds a little bit more richness to their voice. There's another layer to it.
Yeah.
And it's not like a goofy sort of like, vocoder or anything that makes them sound like a robot. It just kind of sounds like they're talking through a digitized vocal cord system and stuff. I just think it's really interesting how that goes.
So now...
we got some more magic technology.
Yeah. They're just
they take
mind
Chip
reading with Soundwave's fingers pressed against Chip's
head.
Soundwave
apparently has mind-reading fingertips, because they take Chip back to the lab where Megatron is, and he's talking about it as if it was like, it's obvious. Don't you know that we have mind-reading technology and stuff? And then me watching this, I'm just sitting there like, you do?
I mean... If you can rewrite Bumblebee's memory chips, I guess.
Yeah.
Why didn't they use his chest tentacle again?
Yeah. Well, maybe that only works with memory chips.
Right.
But his name is Chip and he has a memory. So
there you go.
I don't understand. There's no continuity, man. I can't deal with it.
Let's talk about one of my favorite action scenes. Like, not just in this episode,
whole sequence is so good.
But in the whole season 1. Is Operation Antimatter. The Decepticons already have control of the base, and they have Chip. The goal is to rescue Chip and then stop Megatron from using the antimatter.
It feels like a SWAT raid.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah. Optimus Prime summons Hound and Mirage, who are showcasing their abilities for the audience. And Prime just says, "Fine."
It's just a great scene where they're like, oh yeah, we're getting ready and everything, and just kind of showing, reminding people like, hey, you remember this guy can turn invisible, right? So, this guy can make holograms and stuff.
Step one, punk Rumble.
Yeah.
Rumble is the sole guard on top of the wall, right? A moving boulder, which is Hound's hologram, rolls up to the gate, and Rumble's just like, what's that? And then the Invisible Man, which is Mirage, just starts taunting Rumble with
just voice out of nowhere and stuff,
yeah.
making him think it's like a voice in his head.
Right.
And then like as he's like looking around, looking for the voice, Hound's decloaks and then goes inside.
Somehow Spike and Bumblebee also get inside.
Yeah, and then I think it's like Cliffjumper or something like flies over
no, that's
Rumble's back is turned.
Yeah, when he's looking around for the voice and his back is turned, Bumblebee and Spike fly over with the wheelchair.
Yeah.
Because
they got to give him the wheelchair, man.
Yeah, they forgot the wheelchair.
But and then he's like, "Oh man, I must be dreaming," sort of thing. It's like I must have something wrong with my head.
Yeah,
that's the smartest thing you said all day. And just Rumble's genuine reaction.
Really?
Hey, what's going on here? Rumble's one of the best.
Yeah. So then
he's in the same tier as like Brawn.
Yeah.
Characters you absolutely love.
So they sneak in just in time. Megatron's like, amazing! I've created antimatter!
Oh,
even though Soundwave's done all the work.
Yeah.
And then Chip's like, no, you can't use it for evil! We gotta make Star Trek ships out of it! Because, they use antimatter to power their ships.
I'm gonna be honest with you, I genuinely forgot that was how they powered their
dilithium
ships.
Crystals, man!
Dude, I just remember a really funky looking set in the 90s with like, cool lights and stuff like that. It's a bunch of jargon to me, my friend.
Yeah.
But
anyway.
So then they like infiltrate and Hound makes it look like there's like 1,000 of them and stuff, and they can't tell which one's which.
We did.
And then Mirage manages to like get him.
Snipe a gun.
Yeah, it's just pretty cool. Like it feels like it was very calculated and stuff. It's called Operation Antimatter. They planned this thing out. They get it's like Soundwave style.
They get. Okay, so then the frenetic energy on this next part is so good because they get Spike and Bumblebee get Chip, and also Bumblebee does this like transform over the top of them to get him inside.
You'll see that a lot.
And then all three of them drive up a staircase and down a hallway, narrowly dodging Megatron's laser blast, shoot out a window, which then Rumble turns around and is like, "Where did they come from?" and then they're like. They drive up to Optimus, who is already in a cool pose, and say, Chip's safe, it's your game now! Optimus is suddenly in truck mode, barreling at 100 miles an hour straight into Rumble, crashes through the wall, knocking Rumble off.
Mind you, he runs straight into the wall that Rumble's at. He doesn't move at all, and you just hear him go, "Help!" And then he's just gone. We don't see him.
We don't see. I don't think we see him for the rest of the episode.
I think he shows up in like the final fight.
Yeah, the final fight.
But for the rest of this scene, he's just gone.
Optimus whips around. The Autobot. His trailer folds out. The Autobots drive out of his trailer down the hallway.
Genius.
Transform, running. Sunstreaker says, "Come on, guys, we gotta get that antimatter before it's too late." They smash through the wall, and Megatron says, "It is too late!" and just throws an antimatter cube at them, making the entire lab explode into a commercial break. It is the best scene in all of season one.
Because, like... It's
the pacing, the gags.
It's back to back to back.
It's just so good. That is my favorite scene.
And you don't see that same sort of like on point. You good?
Sorry, that's just my favorite scene.
You took yourself out with that one. Yeah, like you don't see that back to back just hards we're building up kinetic energy.
Right. It just keeps building and building and building and
There's
building.
An escalation.
And then the climax is the whole landscape is exploded.
Yeah.
The whole background turns orange with this antimatter explosion.
Yeah, that
sends us into commercial break.
But before they go back from commercial break and you realize that, just kind of like the building blew up and stuff. They're all just kind of damaged and everything.
Yeah.
You go into this commercial break assuming that Megatron just let loose an antimatter
just
cube.
vaporized everything.
The lug nuts on this transformer of chucking something that is basically a nuke at point blank range.
How did
and then it hard cuts to like, I don't know, like it's a couple miles away.
Yeah.
Like the shot shows the entire facility. The whole horizon is blanketed in just fire.
Yeah.
And this explosion sound like rips through everything, and you kind of see like everything kind of vaporize.
Yeah.
It looks like the way that a nuclear explosion is animated in a lot of anime that you'd see from like the 90s and stuff.
Like the Akira explosion.
It feels like the Akira explosion at the beginning of the movie. So
heck, the end of the movie.
Imagine watching that, and then the Transformers will return right after these short messages and stuff. It's just like, did they die?
Yeah. And then we come back to the commercial break, and the Autobots just sullenly walk out of the lab, beaten and bruised, which they actually have a lot of battle damage. Jazz transforms, and he looks like he got smashed.
He looks like a marshmallow car.
Yeah, he looks like he got smashed by a monster truck.
Yeah, and they're like, they took a lot of damage and stuff, but it's just like, they walked away from that?
Yeah. And then Megatron has not one scratch on him. The lab has a little bit of fire on it. The windows are all blown out, and that's about it. The rest of the lab is pristine.
Relative to what we just saw, pristine. Absolutely flawless.
I feel like that whole antimatter, that whole
it
operation...
feels like they backpedaled from an original draft or something.
Yeah. I feel like that whole scene was written by one professional.
Yeah.
And the rest of the episode was written by somebody else.
Yeah.
Or directed. Maybe it was like directed by one professional. The rest of the episode was directed by somebody else.
I think what made it such a good scene is that this episode is plotted and paced out like a movie rather than a single episode of something.
Yeah.
And it kind of tracks that same sort of like, mid climax, and then,
like, how in old serials where it would like basically show the hero, he gets eaten by a crocodile, or his plane crashes into a mountain or something.
Yeah. And
it says, what happened to him? Find out in the next episode. In the next episode, you find out that there was like 10 minutes that they cut out to get that.
Yeah. Where it's just like, when we last left our hero, he was safe and sound in the village, or something like that. And it's like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. And what really happened was he had like 10 minutes to get out of the plane, or out of the way of the crocodile before it started attacking or whatever.
It's
but
yeah, then they all make their way back to the base. Yeah, they start making their way back to the base, and they just kind of like get back and like rest, honestly.
Yeah. It's a really cool moment of just people hanging out, and then when they see that the Decepticons are coming back, Optimus gives this speech of like,
it's just like, look, I don't have to tell you what's about to happen. They just need to be stopped.
Right.
This is our last stand. It feels apocalyptic.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah, Ratchet was at the site, but then also at the Ark when they show up.
He was at both places.
Wheeljack seems really menacing when Chip regrets giving the antimatter formula, and then Wheeljack says, "There's no way you could have erased your brain," and then he says in the most menacing close-up shot, and the music goes bum 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 as he says, "I've got a much better use for your brain."
Mind you, Wheeljack's voice actor is in like this sort of, I don't know, Cajun voice?
Yeah.
Or something. He's just like, there's no way you could have erased your brain. Actually, no, it feels more like a New York goon or something.
Yeah.
Wild character.
Isn't he voiced... I know he and Sparkplug have the same voice actor.
Yeah, I'd have to find out.
Do they have the same voice as Starscream? No.
I don't think so.
No.
I think it's a different person.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and then it's so funny because you get this rousing speech from Optimus, and then immediately Sideswipe and Sunstreaker just decide, yeah, we can take him.
Yeah. So they do jet judo.
They just run out there. So much is unexplained.
Right.
Number one, this is kind of their first spotlight moment.
No, they had a little bit in the...
Well, yeah, he had the rocket pack and everything. But Sunstreaker...
Yeah. No, they had like the part where they came and rescued Trailbreaker.
That's right. Yeah. So they've had a little bit of screen time and stuff.
Yeah.
But they just...
This is their first major moment.
Yeah. And it's kind of like the first time it's like, wait, they're brothers.
Yeah.
Huh. What?
Yeah.
How do brothers work in this?
Right.
But
it's because they turn into the same car, basically.
Yeah, and that was kind of, for the longest time, that was like the only explanation. It's like, yeah, if you turn into the same car, you're brothers.
Right.
But they can fly. Like, they can just fly.
Yeah.
They don't have to drive anywhere. They don't even need a rocket pack like Sideswipe has. They can just fly.
Right. The inconsistency of whether or not Autobots can fly is absurd.
Yeah, because sometimes it's like, there's a lot of
fall off the jets and they have parachutes.
Yeah, there's a lot of times that Transformers will do, like, the Autobots and Decepticons have two different dynamics.
Right.
Usually, it's that Decepticons have air superiority.
Yeah.
And can fly.
Yeah.
Autobots cannot, so that's why they all transform to cars.
Yeah. But
and
they
it's
can
usually
they also have the human allies.
Yeah.
The
so there's usually like this sort of power dynamic going on and stuff. And if it's not that, then it's usually like, it's something. They usually have this sort of balance between them. And then you just have these rule breakers.
Yeah.
Which fits pretty well for their characters, to be honest.
For sure.
But yeah, they try to suplex a couple of the jets and get sent back down to Earth and then need parachutes. And it's like, I thought you could just fly.
Okay, so here's another good piece of editing, is that after their little scuffle with the jets, it immediately cuts into Optimus is dodging a laser blast, and the battle is already full on fighting, which is really cool because it implies that the battle has been going on during this little funny scene with the jet judo.
Yeah.
Right? And they because in a lot of other stuff I see where, like, there'll be this scene where they do the little fight and then, like, it cuts, and even in Transformers it'll cut back to, oh, well, what are the other Autobots doing? Well, here's the start of their fight, but this is really cool because it seems like the fight's already been going on.
Yeah,
they got there. There's a big
there's a brief moment at the beginning where they're like, here they come, like that sort of thing. But yeah, it just feels like there's not really like a dramatic build up to it. It's just like, they're here, let's get to it. Like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's mostly like the time of day and the setting and everything like that. It's in, like, the wasteland.
Yeah.
In
they
front
got
of
that
the base,
apocalyptic
but
sunset.
The sunset makes it feel really apocalyptic.
And they do
the stakes are pretty high.
In the next episode too.
Yeah, the stakes are really high with, he's a walking nuke. Megatron has antimatter and he just injects it into himself.
He just shoves it into his pecs.
Yeah. And turns into a gun and is now an antimatter gun.
Yes.
How cool is that?
Yes.
Ton of great moments through this whole fight. I love, once again, our boy Brawn.
Our boy Brawn. The plan, the plan that Wheeljack comes up with is that Brawn throws Optimus at the gun.
Yeah.
Knocking...
Not just Optimus. Optimus in his entire vehicle
so
mode. With the trailer
so I think
and
it's
everything.
Thundercracker has Megatron as a gun.
Yeah. No, it's Starscream for a bit.
Is it Star...
Yeah, because he's going all willy-nilly with the gun and stuff.
Yeah,
and
he's like, I'm invincible.
Yeah, and then he sends him into Starscream.
Yeah.
And he drops the gun.
He's aiming at Optimus, but then Brawn is in this trench. Optimus drives over Brawn, who picks him up and throws him at Starscream. Yeah.
Which is like...
the gun slides away. Skywarp picks it up.
Yes.
Wheeljack sends...
Spike
to jackhammer a hole in Skywarp's leg, who then Chip rolls up and puts this little homing beacon thing, or this little device on Skywarp's leg, which allows Teletran 1 to control Skywarp's body to start using the gun to shoot the Decepticons.
Right. It's so wild how... not really convoluted, but just magic. The plan is.
Yeah.
Also, I love the moment where he picks up Spike, and he points the Megatron antimatter gun
Yeah.
directly at him. The concept that Spike stared down the barrel of a literal nuke.
He's going to
Aimed
blow his
directly at
own
him.
hand away
Yeah.
if he shoots Spike.
So then they send...
Oh, yeah. Also, speaking of blowing away, there's this one shot where Starscream shoots, I think it's Hound and Jazz, and it looks like it just disintegrates them, but then the camera just pans over,
They're just
and they're
stuck
just
in the
stuck in
ground.
some rubble.
Yeah,
It's
like
a pretty funny gag.
like gophers or something.
Yeah, and Hound's just like, hey, get me out of here.
So yeah, Wheeljack gets
Yeah.
Skywarp to start shooting at the other
Yeah.
Decepticons, and he's going haywire, and apparently he shoots too much because Megatron starts going on a rant about, like, you know, the antimatter is about to go critical. I gotta get it out of my body. So he literally dumps the cubes out, and then they all explode in a hilarious scene transition.
Yeah.
It all explodes. Huge flash of light. And then there's the Decepticons in the ash, just laying on the ground.
Yeah.
Scene transition
Yeah,
with
the
the
little
Autobot,
Decepticon symbol.
like that.
Yeah.
It's the exact same shot.
Yeah, it just goes back to the same shot. Is it supposed to signify that they were laying there for like an hour or something?
Like, hold on.
It just goes back to the same shot.
And they're all still alive.
Everything, all the praise for editing on this episode goes out the window with that.
Admittedly, while this last part of this episode feels very apocalyptic and climatic and stuff, it's kind of chunky.
Yeah, it is kind of chunky. But then I love they just raise up Chip. They're like, "Hey, Chip, you're a cool dude.
You're a true Autobot.
You're a true Autobot." And he's just like, "Oh, really? I am."
One of us.
Oh, and this is where
us.
the episode title comes from. They say that you rolled for broke back there, so it's roll for it. I think they also say
you
rolled
for broke.
I think they also say roll for it when. No, Bumblebee says, "Let's haul cylinders."
Yeah.
When they drive away. Yeah, the Transformers lingo is funny. We'll get to that in a bit, but yeah. Anything else you want to mention about this episode?
I don't think I have anything else on that. Do you want to move on to Divide and Conquer?
6. Yeah, let's go ahead.
All right.
So, once again, we have Chip and Spike and some other scientist dude who wants Chip to boost their computers by pushing a few buttons.
Yeah, and this brings up a really interesting concept of they walk into this factory and the narrator's describing it and stuff, and there's a poster that says, like, it's got Megatron's face on it, and it just says, like, the enemy or whatever.
Right, it looks like a World War II poster or something like that, a propaganda poster. But, like, the humans are manufacturing weapons to fight against the Decepticons, and I can't believe that this didn't come up at the end of the episode or something like that,
Well, it never gets mentioned.
I don't think it
again, ever.
No, well, I mean, there's that one episode later where the guy has his private army of tanks to defend against the Decepticons.
Yeah, but that's a private endeavor and stuff. He was a rich dude.
This is like the military is making weapons specifically to fight the Decepticons, and it never gets brought up again. And it would have been really useful a lot.
Yeah, this is I think this is the most concerted effort that the humans have put into the Transformers conflict.
Yeah. And
stuff. And then we never see it again. It's
Yeah.
never mentioned whatsoever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Decepticons attack.
It would have really had been like a good plot device at the end of this episode when all the Autobots are presumed to be defeated, like the humans show up to save the day or something like that.
Yeah.
But that would have involved actually killing Optimus Prime.
Yeah. Which also this is
because he's gonna make the save at the end of this episode.
This is the second or is this the first instance of Optimus nearly dying?
Well, I mean, if you count him getting shot in the face and falling out of orbit,
yeah, but then he gets up and
and he's like, "I'm fine."
He's very fine.
So
he's aggressively fine.
This episode is probably the first of a very long tradition of Optimus dying or being in a near-death situation and then coming back to life.
Because there's two different types of Optimus deaths. There's in a coma, and everyone's like, how long is he going to last? I don't know. And then, boom, he's back.
Yeah.
Like in this episode. Or you have like the movie where, spoilers.
And then
he dies and then comes back to life.
Yeah,
but...
a season later, he comes back to life, And then there's other shows where like he'll die and then a few episodes later they'll resurrect him, or he's on death's door and then he gets resurrected and powered up, or he loses his memory or something like that, and then they have to restore that and stuff. But we'll get to those shows later. In this show, it's an epic 3-on-1 fight between Starscream, Thundercracker, and Skywarp. Get a nice little showcase battling Optimus Prime alone. This is a plot point. Optimus is searching for the space bridge, and kind of goes back to what we were talking about the space bridge moving around.
Yeah. And it seems to be confirmed by this episode. But
right.
Yeah, that's Optimus versus 3 Decepticons gets replicated a few different times in media and stuff. And I like how this is the origin of that. Right.
One of the ones that comes to mind is Revenge of the Fallen, in which he actually does die for part of the movie.
Right.
But he fights 3 Decepticons at once and basically beats the crap out of all of them and then gets a cheap shot killed. And that's sort of what happens here, is that, he's not killed by the Decepticons. He's killed by a cheap shot after he saves the humans from an exploding computer.
Yeah, again, the comedic timing sort of coming into play here where, it's like, it's gonna blow, and then he goes, I will shield you. And then it like hard cuts to this gigantic explosion just tearing through him.
Yeah.
It's like, I'll shield you.
And then he's just like
dead.
He's just a little dizzy, and then he gets shot in the face a bunch of times.
Yeah.
But that elbow deflect of the heat-seeking missile is pretty cool.
Yeah. Very agile heat-seeking missile as well. It does a U-turn very quickly.
Yeah, you also brought up this point that how come Megatron gets a power boost in the previous episode or two ago?
Yeah,
when he gets electric shock from a wall. But then Optimus gets an electric shock from a wall here, and it weakens him.
It's because he's the good guy. It's the equivalent of juicing in a competitive sport or something. Taking performance-enhancing drugs. Just, Megatron's more suited for it. Optimus is not.
Yeah. But he just kind of...
Because he's a good bot.
This is an instance of Starscream, like you were saying earlier about, the different facets of the characters come out because of the inconsistent writing. But it creates more depth to the characters. Starscream really sounds like he just wants Megatron's approval and praise in this episode. Because he's just like, surely I deserve to be applauded.
Right. He's just like, please, notice me.
Yeah,
please.
Yeah. And that's like a whole character thing in a different show.
This whole episode, I feel like, is unintentionally Seeker Spotlight. All of the jets seem to get a play.
Yeah, they get some more stuff later on.
Yeah. But except not really from a character's perspective, more just screen time, I'd say.
Yeah.
So Optimus is wounded. They take him back to the Ark and stuff. It just kind of shows how ruthless Megatron is, where he sends Laserbeak in to literally shoot him while he's on the operating table.
Yeah. Which is, I'm sure, a war crime.
Yeah.
And it's kind of neat how Laserbeak kind of hesitates and is scared to go into the base by himself.
Yeah. But it's just so funny because that happens and he's still just on death's door.
Right. Optimus explodes into the commercial break.
Yeah. Sparks flying out.
He shoots him in the chest, and there's just this enormous fire and lava that erupts from his chest. And then we come back from the commercial, he's just like, help.
Yeah. It's he was already on death's door.
Right.
Then he gets shot and exploded. And then he's still on death's door. Just worse, I guess.
I love what Sparkplug says, just, they don't make them like that anymore.
Yeah. What machines have you seen, Sparkplug? Right. But so then they're trying to figure out what they can get to fix Optimus and stuff. And Wheeljack determines somehow that the only thing that will fix him is something called a Cosmotron.
A new Cosmotron.
Some
sort of rectangular slanted block of computer chips that he pulls out of Optimus's guts.
Yeah. I guess basically just like he needs a new liver or something.
Right.
But
and for some reason he has a Cosmotron in his workshop on Cybertron.
yeah, he says like
is he
literally
just like an organ harvester or something?
Yeah, like the only place that I have one of these is on Cybertron.
Right.
And again, it brings up the thing of like, are they robots? Are they creatures?
Yeah.
What does this equate to?
Yeah. Is he just have spare parts like a mechanic shop has spare parts to fix cars with? Or is this the equivalent of him having organs in the freezer? Like,
Yeah.
What? And since it's just, as we see later on, when it's super easy for Ironhide to find, because it's just sitting on his workbench.
Yeah. It's just out in the open. Like even, it's not even like in a preserve jar or anything.
Yeah.
It was
it's
an
just
organ.
sitting on his workbench.
Which I guess is leaning more towards like the mechanic aspect where, you know, you just leave stuff on your bench.
Right.
So then they plot to commandeer the Decepticon space bridge, which I love the power dynamic of the Decepticons always having the space bridge and like the transport to Cybertron.
I thought that was cool how like the human, you know, because of the toys difference, you know, there's only like this many, like 10 Decepticons or something like that, but then there's like 25 Autobots because they made more Autobot toys than Decepticon toys, but the Decepticons have all the better technology.
Right.
Somehow. Because the Decepticons spend their time making the evil inventions, and the Autobots don't have time to make any good inventions because they're spending all their time attacking the Decepticons and stopping the evil inventions.
And also just...
Except for Wheeljack, who makes inventions in his spare time that don't usually work.
And are usually on the unethical side of things.
And then he just decides to create new life.
Yeah.
We'll get to that in the next episode. But yeah, speaking of technology and Autobots, out of all the, like, you know, we've seen that the Decepticons can rewrite memories and stuff like that and hack computers and do stuff like that.
Right. So
how come the only person who can unlock Wheeljack's lab is Chip Chase?
Yeah.
Like, why? Number one, like, why couldn't Wheeljack go to Cybertron to unlock his lab? Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's the Decepticons put a computerized lock on the lab.
They just deadbolted.
So they send Chip to Cybertron without a spacesuit or anything. And apparently Cybertron has a breathable atmosphere to humans.
Yeah, I love the fact that they're just like, yeah, let's go to Cybertron and stuff. And he's like, wow, I've never been to Cybertron before. And the humans go, but they have literally no idea if they can survive the atmosphere.
Yeah, throughout the whole series, the humans just go to Cybertron and are okay without a spacesuit.
And it's really interesting because Cybertron doesn't seem to have an atmosphere.
Right.
It's always night.
Right, it's always night, and there's never any clouds or anything.
Yeah, and it's the exact same
map
painting
I take that back. There are clouds in this episode.
Well, yeah, but in this, it's like the exact same map painting with the stars that they use for the space shots and stuff.
Yeah. It's always the same side of Cybertron. I'm pretty sure it's like, what is that called? Orbital locked, or where the one side of the planet faces the same way all the time.
It's like the moon. It doesn't rotate. Although it just moves.
I believe, and this is, you know, this comes up later in the season, but I believe in the comics it's mentioned that Cybertron is actually just free floating through space. It's not.
It doesn't have like an orbit or anything.
System. Yeah, it's not
it's literally just a hurling meteorite soaring through the sky.
Right. I mean, it's going to be in a solar system later in the season, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah. So
Chip has to use Teletran 1 to find the location of the space bridge, you know, figure it out, because, you know, it moves around all the time.
Yeah.
And that's how he's able to figure it out, is because he's got to calculate, you know, astrophysics and stuff like that. But this leads to what I'm pretty sure is the worst joke in all of Transformers ever. I hate this joke, and I cringe every time it happens. Every time I watch this episode.
Please remind me of what you speak.
Okay, so Chip Chase is doing his thing on the computer, and Ironhide, I think it's Ironhide. One of the Autobots remarks, not even Optimus Prime could figure out where the space bridge was gonna appear next. And Chip says, well, he didn't use the greatest detective on Earth, Teletran 1. And then Spike says, in a close-up shot...
yes.
Hey, it's just like Sherlock Holmes, but with floppy disks. Ugh!
Well,
I hate it!
Well, you know what's the funniest thing about that is that nobody comments on
nobody comments on it. Nobody laughs.
Which I think might have... It totally wasn't, but it would. I like to think that it's intentional, that it's just like, Sherlock Holmes with floppy disks. Yeah, okay, Spike.
Notice that Spike is not the one who gets to go to Cybertron in this episode.
That is true.
It's because he made that joke. It's not even a good joke.
Yeah, so they track down where the space bridge is.
Like, I love dad jokes. I make dad jokes. This is not that.
This is just bad. But yeah, they track down the space bridge, and there's a pretty cool fight when... Like, it's in the woods this time.
And in the rain, too.
Yeah.
And it's really, really neat.
And we get... This is not the first instance of some liquid nitrogen. That was in More Than Meets the Eye. But...
Right. We get, once again, counter. Liquid nitrogen count is up to 2. Ironhide saying some liquid nitrogen should cool things up.
Right.
That's when they're on Cybertron, though, and he uses that. Well... Okay, so he uses it, but he doesn't say anything about it to freeze one of the characters. Is it Starscream? Yeah. And then he uses it again once they get to Cybertron, which for some reason he shoots it out of his shoulder cannon that appears in this scene. But once they get to Cybertron, he's got to use this backpack of liquid nitrogen that's just hanging on the wall.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, there's a 4th reflector in this scene that Starscream sends over the bridge, and he's like, no, not me, please.
Yeah. But then he makes it over fine. And,
he makes it over fine.
And Shockwave's like, they got transported over, just say okay and stuff, you're good to go. And then the Autobots show up.
Right.
And commandeer the next flight.
Right.
They get there, and the 4th reflector's nowhere to be seen, so...
No, he's helping Shockwave.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, I guess they're
he's
just chilling.
In the corner.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just like the fact that they're just chilling with each other.
Yeah. I think maybe that's why, I believe there was a reflector toy that came with Shockwave, or Shockwave came with a reflector toy recently.
Maybe.
And by recently, I mean like a couple of years ago.
Probably.
But anyway.
So they managed to commandeer it, and they get over into Shockwave's lair, have a good old shootout with him. There just so happens to be a pack of liquid nitrogen on the wall, as mentioned.
Right. Oh, I also want to mention that like the 3 reflectors get fused into one during the fight in the woods.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Yeah, and I think they show up again as 3 people after this, but it's just kind of a weird little thing that like, what happened there? Reflector's an interesting character where he's like, is he one bot with 3 minds, or is he 3 bots with 1 mind, or like...
I always assumed that it was 3 bots with 1 mind, because they talk in unison.
Yeah. More
often than not, and they don't seem to have any sort of distinct personalities.
Right. And interestingly enough, his toy, there's 3 bots, the original toy, and they're each distinct. But in the show, they just took the design of I think it's the middle one, with the actual camera lens in his gut.
He's special.
And then just cloned him twice without the camera lens.
Yeah. I also love his use of the flash, where he turns on his camera flash.
Yeah.
And it just shines and blinds all the Autobots and stuff. It's funny.
And Rumble can split open the earth.
As usual.
But yeah. Anyway, they get to Cybertron. Ironhide glues Shockwave and Reflector 4 to the ground.
Yeah, so they make their way over to Wheeljack's lab. They find the thing. Chip undoes the lock. It's pretty cool. There's a really nice sequence where they're on Cybertron, and they're just kind of looking around, and Chip is like, wow, this is amazing, and stuff like that. Yeah. And then Bumblebee says, like, I mean, to me, it just feels like home.
Yeah.
And
is that kind of in this episode, or is that
it's in this it's either in this episode or in Ultimate Doom. But
I think there's this in Ultimate Doom.
There's a lot, well, even if it isn't in this episode, there's a really great moment where they're like going through Cybertron, and you just kind of see a lot of the environment.
Right.
And there's always that kind of weird, wub wub sound that plays a lot. Yeah, it sounds like a weird, like, satellite signal.
Yeah.
But it's constantly playing every time that they're on Cybertron.
Yeah.
And it just kind of has, like, this weird, melancholy, like, it's a post-apocalyptic world.
It really is.
There's nobody there.
Right, yeah.
So you get this really cool sense of them, it'd basically be like walking through abandoned New York or something.
Right.
And,
or if there was, like, an abandoned city on the moon.
Yeah,
like...
well, I mean, it's basically the size of the moon, so...
Yeah.
But, yeah, it feels really desolate.
Which is also interesting that Cybertron is, like, smaller to account for the fact that, there's only ever, as far as we know, as many Transformers as there are toys.
Yeah, in the G1 continuity...
Well, I mean, there's also a lot of generics that show up here.
Yeah, but it's generally that there are so many toys in that original wave, and they just kept building and building and building on them, which kind of became a problem later down the line. Right. But it's kind of always assumed that, every single thing that you can buy is what lives on Cybertron.
Yeah, it's kind of...
So, like, that's a really small planet, to be honest. It's honestly more like a meteorite than anything else. Well, at least in
bigger
G1.
Than a meteorite.
Well, it's big, but...
Meteoroid.
Yeah, it's a very small population. But they make their way to Wheeljack's lab. They get the Cosmotron and everything. Megatron concocts a plan to use the three Seekers, the three Cybertronian Seekers, and just casually introduces these new characters.
Here it is again. Megatron just makes up plans on the fly. He watches Starscream fight in the woods in the rain and tells him to, hang on, I've got an idea. Let them get to Cybertron so that I can contact these other dudes to make it rain on Cybertron, which apparently they have acid rain on Cybertron, which is an actual thing due to pollution. But
implying that Cybertron is a heavily polluted thing.
Right.
And also has an atmosphere, I guess.
Yeah, because it has those red clouds.
Yeah.
But the... these three Seekers, I think we mentioned them earlier, who would later go on to inspire characters like Acid Rain, Sunstorm, and Typhoon, I think they're called.
Starscream has a red and blue and white color scheme. It's pretty classic. Thundercracker, blue. Okay.
Blue and grays.
Blue and grays. Skywarp, blacks and purples. Very interesting distribution of colors. And, it's across most of the character model as well, so it's pretty well distributed.
Yeah. These
guys are just, like, straight, like,
solid neon
jumpsuit,
green.
Pajama, like, every
solid
single of them.
Yellow.
Yeah.
And solid blue.
Acid Rain is completely neon green.
Yes.
Sunstorm, and by the way, none of them are names. None of them speak in this entire episode.
Right. And they
Sunstorm
still turn
is
good attention to detail, though, in this episode is that they still turn into their Cybertronian modes that were shown at the beginning of More Than Meets the Eye.
Right, the weird little pyramid-looking jets.
Yeah.
But yeah, Acid Rain is complete neon green, minus like the head and some of the feet. I think like their feet.
They have a few details on them.
Yeah, it's like the jet thruster or something in their heels.
Yeah,
but Acid Rain is completely green. Sunstorm is completely yellow, and Typhoon, I believe his name is completely blue.
Yeah,
not like.
It's like blue.
It's like the exact same color as Thundercracker. It's no different.
Solid blue.
Yeah, Thundercracker just has like gray highlights and stuff.
Yeah.
But originality. They are not strong in.
So they shoot the clouds and cause a acid rainstorm, which you would think traps the Autobots in. Apparently, acid rain is much more stronger on here. Much more stronger.
Much stronger, or more strong. I don't know.
Grammar's not my strong point. But anyway, you would think that the Autobots would just hide in shelter and maybe go underground or something like that. Or Trailbreaker's there. He could use his shield to get them across. No, they just run out into the rain and let it fry their circuits. And they're all like, dying. And Bumblebee sets down Chip and then lays down in a comfortable position and says, "We failed."
Yeah.
And apparently Chip is okay in the acid rain. I mean, if this is like chewing up their circuits, why is it not eating his flesh?
Yeah. Acid rain has a caustic... It's basically like if you were walking through rain that was, instead of rain, it was bleach. And that's on Earth.
Yeah.
This is Cybertronian acid rain.
Right.
This would be the type that would, like, melt your face off Raiders of the Lost Ark style.
Yes.
But yeah, it's just so funny how they structure it so that, commercial break happens and it's like, oh no, it's their darkest tower and stuff. Yeah. And then Chip gives, like, a rousing speech of some kind, and he's like, he says, you guys can't give up.
He says, no one is ever disabled as long as they have courage. And that is such a great line, and the fact that it's coming from the guy in the wheelchair is so cool and empowering, and Chip is just the greatest character, man.
It's genuinely tragic that we never get to see Chip make a reprise in later media.
He's probably in a comic
somewhere. In G1, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, and he phases out pretty quickly in season 2 also.
Which is so unfortunate.
It's so sad, because he's such a great character.
Yeah. He seems to get replaced by Carly later
Carly's
on,
a cool character.
Yeah.
But, like, Chip should have been around. Oh, he did get that one spotlight moment when Megatron takes over the Earth and sends the Autobots away.
Right.
In that one episode.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that later. And that has a nice apocalypse.
There's a lot of great...
does a really good job. G1 has some really great, like, post-traumatic event, or not traumatic,
the quiet after the storm has
the quiet after
through.
The storm moments, dramatic, apocalyptic battles and stuff like that.
If you think about it, the whole series and
then all of season 3 is basically post big event, So
yeah. But the whole series, I mean, like, Transformers as a franchise, it's giant robots.
Yeah.
That turn into vehicles and stuff. There's a ton of collateral damage involved in there. Yeah. Some of them are generally about the same size as like your standard mechas and stuff.
Right.
And those ones have insane collateral damage.
Yeah.
And a lot of the Transformers also tap into near godlike powers and abilities and stuff, depending on the show. So it really is kind of like a cosmic franchise at its core.
Yeah. But
a lot of times they kind of bring it down to, like, this sort of ground level and stuff. Which I think really that works a lot.
I love it when one of the series runs for a really long time and you watch them. It starts out, they fight on Earth, and then it moves into space and then to Cybertron and to cosmic proportions, and, like, it gets so big, and then, like, the toy line starts to dwindle, so then it, like, settles down and, like, ends up like this really small, like, all that's left is just small conflict happening way out in the corner of the cosmos somewhere.
Yeah.
And that happens a couple of times throughout the series just because of, Transformers, it waxes and wanes.
Oh, yeah.
And
there are good and there are bad.
It makes for good like mythology.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to this episode.
So he gives them the speech and stuff, and then Trailbreaker just decides, well, I guess I've got enough juice left in the tank to make a shield.
Why didn't you do that in the first place?
And then he's like, awesome, this'll make your self-repair systems come into play. And they all get up and they're like, hey, strength. It's like, why didn't Optimus have that?
Right. The self-repair didn't work on the Cosmotron. We had to go all the way here.
Yep.
It's kind of a convolute, or not convolute, what do you call it? A contrived commercial bumper there. But this is also where the episode's title comes from. Because Megatron decides that he's going to divide and conquer. He's divided some of their warriors on Cybertron, and some of the other warriors he's going to attack on Earth while their morale is down about Optimus, laying on death's door.
Right. And something that's pretty cool is that as the Autobots are getting back and stuff, towards the beginning of the episode, Huffer, which he's a great character. He turns into a tiny little truck, but he's in the same class as Brawn as being one of the strongest.
Right.
But he's a really interesting character in that he's very pessimistic, not like grumpy like Gears, but more of like neurotic, like he I think he says in this episode, like, we're doomed, I know it, like that.
Yeah. That's the kind of his catchphrase.
He has a very, you kind of see that pop up in Rat Trap and Beast Wars, where they kind of serve the same purpose of, like, we're all gonna die, sort of thing. But he has, like, a little mini arc in this episode where he starts out, like, you know, oh, no, he's done. Optimus is dead. That. And then towards the end...
Spike also gives an encouraging speech.
Yeah. And Huffer kind of steps up to be, like,
He kind of takes charge almost.
Takes a little bit of charge, and he's like, well, the Decepticons are coming. Gonna have to go fight them. Like that.
Might as well go out shooting.
Yeah. So there's a nice little...
because Spike
mini
is
arc
like,
there.
hey, we can do it. Come on, guys. And he's trying to carry this big old gun.
He grabs a Prowl's pistol.
I think it's Jazz.
Is it Jazz? Okay. But he picks up this giant pistol and he's like carrying it like a massive musket.
Yeah.
He's like, let's go. And then that inspires Huffer to be like, well, it might as well go down swinging. And yeah, I like that. He doesn't, I mean, it kind of gets reversed in later episodes. He's still back to the same, you know, mindset and everything, but
nice. I mean, being an episodic show, you know, characters go through their arcs multiple times.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you know, people do that too, where they'll go through like an arc in real life. You know, you don't just have this like climatic moment that changes. I mean, so it depends on the. It depends on the moment. You know, sometimes you will just change forever after a certain thing happens.
Yeah.
But in the long run, it takes a while to change a mindset.
It takes a while for people to process things.
Right. You might like turn around, change your mind on something momentarily, but it will take a while for you to process and adapt to a new mindset.
Yeah. Because you might decide something and then later on, a few days later, you just like, oh man, this is tough.
Yeah.
And stuff. And it's like, am I really, you might have doubts, or you might think maybe I was mistaken or something like that.
So in an episodic show, it kind of makes sense for characters to like, hey, we can do it. And then the next episode, like, maybe.
Yeah.
You know?
But, so the Decepticons are coming to attack the base while they're down.
Battle. But this one kind of is a little shorter.
Yeah, we got another apocalyptic sunset like we did in the last episode.
Right, and the Decepticons trash the Autobots and the
but the
Megatron for some reason they're running low on energy, so Megatron's like, here, Starscream, shoot me at the Autobots, and so he takes out a lot of them on his own.
Yeah. But then the Autobots from Cybertron get back and, you know, kind of rush their way through Shockwave's chamber and into the space bridge all the way back to Earth.
Yeah, all the way back to Earth, and they rescue Spike from being torn apart by Ravage.
Yeah.
And
then they get back
the
and
Cosmotron just in time to.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool thing where it's like, you know, there's a ticking timer on, like, you know, he's gonna die, like that, and then they pass it down to each other, and then Ratchet like jams it in and stuff, starts fixing it, and so then you get out to the battle and. It looks like the Decepticons have won, and then
also Shockwave is there for no reason.
Oh yeah,
a little animation.
He just decided to join in.
Yeah,
and then we have a great reveal where Prime standing up on the cliff, and then the big triumphant Autobot theme. It's classic.
But Megatron thinks he's won, and then Optimus challenges him to a one-on-one duel, which
and then Starscream kind of elaborates, like, you know, he's invoked the battle code.
Right.
And stuff is like...
Which is kind of great foreshadowing for the last episode of the season finale of season 1.
Right. Yeah, they have a similar situation. But, yeah, it's just... Right. So again, another thing that they just like, yep, it's the battle code. You gotta do it, man.
They just throw in things like that, which create, like, a whole lore for Transformers that
and I feel like that's
really neat. Like, you know, what is the battle code? That it creates this like sort of cultural honor system, you know? Like
retroactively looking at it, you know, a lot of Megatron's origins are described as him being a gladiator in Chaos. Right. So it's interesting to think about that possibly stemming from the mention of the battle code here
and the gladiator fight at the end of season 1.
Yeah, because you know, like maybe in some instances it's like a do or die gladiatorial situation. Right. Other instances it's kind of honor based and stuff.
Yeah,
and Megatron and Optimus have this sort of honor code between each other in a lot of shows. And you have a lot of instances where Megatron's like, somebody tries to kill Prime and then he'll turn on them and be like, he's mine, sort of thing.
They also kind of have a mutual respect for each other, despite being on opposite sides. Even as far back as this, sometimes Optimus seems a little remorseful when, he thinks that Megatron's dead, or Megatron, gets bored when he thinks that Optimus is dead or something,
Yeah. But so they do a one-on-one duel.
Yes.
There's no weapons and stuff. Like it's on.
They just start
wailing on each other.
Yeah. One of them shoots off the other's gun, and then the other shoots off the other's gun or whatever. So that they just start. Like Megatron starts the fight by shooting at Optimus, who's up on the cliff, and Optimus just swan dives into Megatron.
Yeah. It's like throwing rocks at each other and stuff.
And then Optimus uses laser vision, which I don't think he ever uses again, but Megatron uses laser vision in a later episode.
Yeah. Laser eyes is something it's kind of like
inconsistent who has them and who doesn't.
It's kind of like magic hand technology where it shows up when it's not even really needed, just when it's funny that it's there.
I think the one who...
Because he basically does like a Three Stooges, like, got your eyes, and it's like, oh!
Yeah, he shoots him in the face with the laser eyes. I think the most consistent person or Transformer with laser vision is probably Devastator.
Yeah, he uses it like at least 4 times, and for Transformers, that's very consistent. A lot of the Dinobots have it.
I think Sludge has... Because Sludge has laser vision, and so does...
Snarl.
Swoop.
Snarl has a lot of laser vision.
Snarl shoots it from his tail.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And Slag, or Slug as he's now known, shoots it from his horns.
Sometimes it changes with the Dinobots.
And then, of course, Grimlock has his Godzilla breath.
Yeah.
But we'll get to them next episode.
They are fantastic.
Let's finish up with this episode. I find it funny when Optimus is shooting at Megatron, who's laying on the ground, who's out of power, and he's like, I used up too much power fighting the Autobots. But he looks like he's being tickled by the
laser it's just
blast. Because he's shooting him right in the gut,
And it's also kind of funny that he's like shooting him while he's down.
Yeah.
It's like, you're fine.
Optimus gets brutal sometimes, but also sometimes he's just very sarcastic.
Yeah, and Megatron. Feel like
this is one of those.
This is one of the first times where Megatron is like, "Starscream, help me!"
Right, and then I have here in my notes it says "snide scream,"
which is honestly the best way to describe. This is probably the best dynamic shift between Megatron and Starscream that we get to see happen. It's very rare that it happens.
Right.
But every once in a while...
He's got the upper hand in this.
Yeah.
Because Megatron's like, oh no! And Starscream's like, well, I guess you're not fit to be our leader. So then Megatron jumps back into the battle.
Yeah.
And then after he's defeated and yields to Optimus, then Starscream's just like, we'll just take our leader back for repairs. He's so snide.
That's what I love about their dynamic, is that it's not just Megatron always being on the up and up of what Starscream's scheming and stuff.
Right.
Sometimes there's the very rare instance where he has the upper hand.
Yeah.
And it's great.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting that in those moments, he never really takes his opportunity to be like, you're at my mercy. I'm going to take it from you. I'm going to take the leadership.
Right.
And that gets drawn out sometimes where it's like they kind of have this back and forth dynamic of they both need each other. It feels like a triangle sometimes where Optimus and Megatron have that dynamic of they kind of play off of each other. They're we're not so different, you and I sometimes.
Are you saying the 3 leaders, the Transformers, are in a love triangle?
More of like a linear node where it's Optimus and Megatron are connected, and then Megatron and Starscream are connected.
Right.
But there's like that sort of power dynamic between them. And I like how it's not just the 2 leaders. It's also the 2.
Also got Starscream.
Yeah.
Just to kind of contrast, Starscream keeps Megatron on his toes while characters like Ironhide and Jazz help Optimus run his outfit,
Yeah. And they're kind of like the Rock and stuff for him.
Yeah.
I really like that. that it ends with that sort of dynamic shift,
Right.
because
And-
the past couple episodes, he's always been on the back foot
right.
and stuff. He's been very close.
And that's why it kind of helps complete this sort of 3-episode story arc. In a
Yeah.
way. And yeah, I feel like Starscream is more developed in that way in the first season, and he kind of becomes a little more tropey in the second season.
Yeah, well, I think like season 1, you just have more variety with the kinds of situations that he's in.
It's really character based because they have a smaller cast,
right?
And then
later on, the cast just gets so bloated that it's just like new characters every single time, and there's a lot of good. There's really good
episodes on individual characters, but like, yeah, a lot of the older characters kind of become more tropey.
Yeah, it's like the new releases kind of take the forefront.
Yeah.
Whenever they come out.
Because, I mean, ultimately, it is a toy commercial.
Yeah, it's designed to sell toys, but
it is a really good commercial.
Yeah, I think they do a good really job of like
commercial.
Working in the new characters and giving them a good bit of personality. It's very rare in season 2 that you see new characters have just like a very one-note personality and stuff.
R.I.P. Skids.
Well, Skids, yeah, unfortunate.
He has 2 lines out of 46 episodes.
Very unfortunate.
He's in like 3.
Yeah.
But we'll get to him later.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, he does get his own solo comic though, so I guess it kind of balances out.
You know,
he had like an issue or 2 of the comic where he was the main character.
Yeah, more often than not, if there's
Blaster got a good run in the comics.
Yeah. We'll get to
that
spotlights with most of those characters.
100 years. But
anyway. Yeah. Anything else you wanted to bring up about Divide and Conquer?
Yes, actually. More on Transformers biology. In later series, of course, it becomes very common, especially after Beast Wars, to mention like the Transformers soul is called a spark.
Yeah.
And it's like this energy ball that
Beast Wars
really Beast Wars
was really formative in the depiction of like what is a Transformer life.
But in here, before that happens, a lot of times it's just like their energy, their circuits, their brain module, whatever. It jumps around a lot. But in this episode, it's specifically mentioned, Megatron specifically mentions, are you sure that Optimus's laser core was snuffed out?
Yeah.
So apparently,
that's when
like,
he sends
the laser
Laserbeak
core
to go
is
snuff
like
it out.
this. Yeah, that's when he sends Laserbeak to go, shoot him. So apparently, in the G1 cartoon, their main life force is the laser core.
Yeah.
And that's really cool, like proto spark sort of thing.
Which
right? And I
don't think
feel
we
like
ever see his laser core in this, do we?
I feel like I remember not in this episode for sure, but I remember in something there was like there was some toy of Optimus. Oh, it's Transformers Cybertron Optimus Prime toy behind the Matrix has like this little orb that looks like it would open up, and inside there'd be like a laser core or something, No, I always thought that was pretty neat. And there was
well, I feel like in one of the Marvel comics they showed a laser core. Yeah, because I seem to remember some
sort of like sphere
and it was
thing
like
with like a laser inside.
Well, it was like two nodes, and there was like a little bzz, in between them. It kind of looked like a Tesla coil reaction happening there. Right. It was very. It felt very like apparatus.
Right.
It felt like a scientific experiment more than like a beating heart or anything.
Yeah, and I do think that's pretty neat as a proto spark. But this episode, along with many others throughout Generation 1, brings up one major plot hole. In Transformers the movie, Optimus opens up his chest and reveals the Matrix, right? So how come when they open up his chest in this episode, they don't see the Matrix?
Yeah, and that's, a good bit of retconning. It can't
really, it's a retcon. It's not something that, but they were making the, around the time, I suppose this episode, from what I've heard, these 3 episodes were in production at the same time that, around the same time that the pilot was airing.
Yeah, these...
and then the movie kind of started production, like maybe later season 1.
It was towards the beginning of season 2, I think, when they started, wasn't it?
It's somewhere around that, like end of season 1, beginning of season 2. They started making the movie, which is, we'll get into that when we get to the movie. But so the notes might have been being passed around. That's how the female Autobots we mentioned earlier kind of came into existence. And we'll get to that when we get to their episode. But
it's very interesting.
Apparently nobody passed the note about the Matrix when they were making this episode.
Yeah.
But the Matrix is introduced very early on in the Marvel comics.
Yeah.
And in there, of course, they also mention like the personality chips or something like that. So it's like, what exactly does power the Transformers? What in this continuity is their life force, right? And with Beast Wars, of course, it's retconned to be the sparks, but in here, the laser core is sort of the original.
This is like the
force.
First mention of like what powers a Transformer,
life
what
force.
Keeps them alive, and stuff. Yeah, and it's interesting how like the Matrix, even though it's around like the same time and stuff, when the ideas of the Matrix were being developed, like one went the direction of like this kind of feels like the demon core of just this unknowable radioactive thing that just sort of transforms anything around it into unspeakable horrors and stuff. Yeah. And then in the movie version, it's basically the MacGuffin of pure goodness and life and everything. So it's kind of interesting how that's a pretty easy through line to keep track of with the comics and the show, is that the comics had a lot more room to explore darker possibilities and everything. And then the movie was, the movie was dark, but more often than not, the show tended towards the lighter side of things.
I mean, it's one of those things where it's like it deals with darker subject matter. I mean, like the Autobots got massacred in both of these last 2 episodes.
Yeah, they don't shy away from it.
Because it's a episodic thing, you guys reset the status quo at the end of every episode.
It's a multi-parter. It's not like the comics where you have like Autobots are all dead and the Decepticons have won by the third issue.
right. Shockwave's just hanging Autobots by their necks.
Like the deactivated corpses of the dead Autobots and stuff. It's nuts. But
anyway, yeah, you're right. I see your point. I think the Matrix maybe is a well-known thing among the Autobots. Just my little theory retconning thing here is the Matrix is just a well-known thing among the Autobots at this time, or at least the people who follow closely with Optimus Prime. So they're not surprised to find it in there, and that's why they don't say anything about it. Yeah. And it's not part of the problem, so they don't have any reason to open the Matrix compartment.
Right. Or it's just like one of those things where it's like...
But the other Autobots, like Hot Rod and Ultra Magnus, they all act surprised when Optimus reveals the Matrix.
It could be that the Matrix is just something that they know that, the leader of the Autobots has it. Yeah. And then it basically be like revealing like, I have the badge of being the president of the Autobots. And it's like, cool, where is it? And it's like, I surgically grafted it to the inside of my body. And it's like, oh, you keep that inside of you?
Yeah.
What?
And that's another thing that you can't directly analog between humans and Transformers. But I mean, I guess it's just the magnificence and brilliance of the Matrix takes them off guard when they see it. Like they know it's there.
It's quite shiny. It's very shiny.
But anyway, I think that's probably about all we've got to say.
Yeah, we've drained these episodes pretty dry.
Yeah. I think that's probably it for this episode of our podcast. Yeah. You want to do our wrap up?
Yeah, next episode we're going to be covering episodes 7 through 10 of Generation 1, Fire in the Sky. That was a really, really entertaining one. SOS Dinobots. Let's go.
Classic.
Getting the Dinobots in on this.
That was one of the earliest episodes of Transformers ever. So.
Right. Fire on the Mountain and War of the Dinobots. And those ones are kind of like, it's 2 Dinobot episodes and 2 Skyfire episodes. Yeah. Which very, very good character.
Well, we'll get into it next time that we release an episode.
Absolutely.
So join us then. to hear our thoughts on those 4.
Thanks so much for listening, everybody, and we'll see you in the next one.
Roll out.
Woo! BroBots in disguise.